Hey, if you're new in this channel, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. Today I am going to teach you how you can build your first full stack web application using React.js. We will be building a simple blood donor app that allows to keep track of blood donations. The user will be able to create, update, and delete documents inside the database. Every time a document is created or edited, the app will also display that timestamp inside the UI. This is a beginner level project for you to build some full stack foundations. By the end of this tutorial, you should be able to use this project as a blueprint for your next full stack project. We will be using plenty of tools to develop this full stack app, but the main focus will be on React.js, Tailwind CSS, and MongoDB. Don't worry, I will teach you all you need to know. We will start by developing the backend part first, so the server folder. And later we'll move on to the front-end part of our application, the client folder. For your own convenience, I added timestamps in this video. Check the video description below. Let's see what this web app can do. As you can see, when there are no blood donations, you get this UI and you can click this button to create your first document inside the database. Let's just click it. You simply fill out this form and click this button. Click Save and boom, there you have it. This app will tell you how many donations you have registered inside the database so far. And of course, you can simply edit this, May 24, London City, press update, and you have it updated. And if you click anywhere, you get the same information but with a different UI. You get this model. And if you want to delete, you get this information, and if you click the button, you delete it. This cool, this fast. As you probably noticed it already, we also display a message to the user every time an action takes place. Time to build all of this from scratch. Before we start coding, I should tell you about the requirements for you to follow along. Okay? So basically you will need to have Node.js installed inside your machine. So if you click Node.js, and you can go and install this in your own machine. Okay? Node.js is necessary and will also allow you to run npm commands. After installing this, you can check if you have it installed or not. And this is simple. You can do that inside the terminal like I'm doing, or you can open a new terminal inside Visual Studio Code and you can just type node -v, press enter, and if you get back this version number, it means that you actually have Node up and running, which is good. And you can also check that for npm, but npm is installed automatically when you install Node.js, but just in case, you can check doing a similar thing. So you type npm -v, press enter, and if you get a number back, that means you have it installed. So this is it. This is simple. All you have to do is install Node and make sure that you have all of this up and running, and then you can actually follow the tutorial. As you can see, I have one empty folder prepared right here. So inside, at the root level, I am going to create the two main folders that are going to be necessary for this project. So server for our backend and client for our front end. We'll leave the client folder for now, and we will work on inside the server folder. We now need to navigate into the server folder and create our package.json file. I'm going to run npm init-y, press enter, and this is going to create the package.json file that I need. Time to move on and install a few dependencies that we know that it's going to be necessary throughout this project. Although it's not really necessary in this project, I want to separate my dependencies. So we'll have the node.mon package as a dev dependency and all the remaining dependencies as regular dependencies. So for that, I'm gonna go and type npm I --save-dev, and there's a typo already, save-dev node.mon. And this should install node.mon as a dev dependency, and we can check that inside the package.json file. And it actually did, as we can see here. Now I know that I need to install a few more dependencies, okay, 4, and I'm gonna install them, and when the time comes, I'm gonna explain you a little bit more about them. So I'm gonna run npm I. I'm gonna start with Express, of course, and I also need Mongoose. So Mongoose, and I need course, and also .env. So these are my 4 main backend dependencies. All the dependencies are now installed. So it's time to create the file that is going to be the brain of our application, the brain of our backend. And that file normally is called index.js. So inside server, I can create index.js. Okay, and this is going to be the main file. Okay, and we installed node.mon, and node.mon essentially will help us to restart the server every time a change in the code occurs. But we also need to create 2 custom scripts. Okay, so we can actually delete this one, or we can reuse this one, and we'll have the start script, and this is going to be node.js index.js. Okay, and we need another custom script to run our development server, and that is going to be this script, which is dev, and then we can use just npm run dev to start our development server. For that, I need to add node.mon, and I want to run index.js when I use this script. Time to set up our Express.js application, and for that we want to import Express, but we cannot really do that yet. We need to go back and change this so we can use the type module, which will allow us to use imports and exports. This is what you need to add inside your package.json file. And this is necessary, this type module allow us to do the exports and imports inside the app. So I'm also showing you how you can add comments inside package.json file. If you try, you cannot really add comments like you will do normally. So this is a way for you to add a comment for yourself in case you need one. This is why I added this comment, so you know why I am adding this type module. You now can use imports. So we can now use import, and we want to import the Express package that we have installed, and we want to import it from Express, of course. We will need to import a few more things, but for the moment this is all we need, so I'm gonna leave it like this. I'm gonna now define a const for my application to use express. This is necessary. Now I can see if I can, I can now do more stuff. I can actually listen to a localhost port number, but for that, because I want to separate things, I want to create a config file where I will have my localhost port number. So let's do that. You don't really have to separate things like I'm gonna do now, okay? But I want to separate things because that's what it's normally done in the real world. So I'm gonna now create inside the server, I'm gonna create a new file called config.js. And all I want to do is to export a const, and I'm gonna call this server local host port, and you can go with whatever number you want, I believe, but I'm gonna go with 8135. Okay, this one is meaningful to me. So basically this means that in terms of the backend, the server port number is going to be this, and I have to access localhost, and then this port number. Now we have a localhost server port number that we can use. So let's go and import that. So I'm gonna import, and this is going to be the server localhost port. There you go. So this is what I want to import, so I have access to this file and this port number. So this means that I can now listen to this port number, okay, and this is what I'm going to be doing. So at the bottom of this file, I'm just going to do app.listen, okay, this is the method. And what do I want to do? I want to listen to this port number right here, okay. So the syntax is this, and now I can continue doing this. This is just the basic syntax, and I want to console log a message, so console.log, and tell the user inside Visual Studio Code, because remember this is backend stuff, so you cannot see inside the browser console, but Visual Studio console. I want the user to know that I want to send like a backend message to tell the user, okay, the server is running on a given port. So that's what I want to do. And for that, to be faster, I'm just going to copy paste a string that I have prepared. Okay, now the app is listening to this port number inside the config file. So now I want to try to access my backend my backend root. So I can do app.get, and get it's a method, and we will be using other methods. And when we want to use the get method, this actually can be done inside the browser itself. But if it's a put method or a delete method or whatever, you need to use some other tools like Postman, I believe. But I'm not going to use that one. I'm going to use the Thunder client because I have that extension already inside Visual Studio Code. Okay, so this is the method, and what I want to do is I want to access the root of my backend. And this means that I need requests and responses. So request and response, okay? And I'm already messing up because I need to have this with a different syntax, and this is the correct syntax. Now, arrow function, I believe this is all good now. And I want to console log the request, console.log. I mean, you don't really have to, but I want to console log the request. So it's up to you if you wanna follow this exactly or not. But essentially, I want to return a response, the response status. I want to know if this request was successful or not. In this case, I'm gonna use the status code 200. Okay, so response in this case response, and the status code is going to be 200. 200 is the generic status code for all good, all okay. And now I want to use the send method to send a message, and I want to send the message backend message saying welcome to the root of your application. So we now can test this to see if this is working or not. I tried to run the server and the app crashed, but it was not hard to figure out why. I messed up when doing this import. I needed to add .js at the end, .js, and now I can run my custom script, npm run dev. So npm run dev, and this should make it work. And as you can see, Node.mon is already working for us, and we got the message back. Okay, your server is running on localhost port number 8135. So let's see if that's correct or not. As expected, I have accessed localhost and I see the backend message that we coded right here. Okay, so this is all good, and if I refresh, of course, it stays there. So the thing is, I wanted to use this port number inside a different file. So in case I want to go with a different port number, so let's say 8000 instead, if I now try to access, this is going to crash, of course. But if I go to the new port number, I will see the message again, as expected. And this is why I wanted to separate this port number, because I want to import this file inside other files, and in case I want to change this port number for whatever reason, I just have to change it in one single place. So let's put this back, 8135, and let's go to 8135, and this is all good. Let's continue. Okay, we now can access our backend root, but what happens if someone somehow wants to access a route that doesn't exist, like this one? Because we have not prepared our code, we'll get just the generic information, cannot get whatever route that doesn't exist. So I don't know, I can change this to, I don't know, sales, whatever. We always get that, but we want to create inside the index.js, we want to send a server error message when this route for some reason is not correct. So now what we want to do is also at the bottom of this file, can be here, we want to use app.get, so throughout our app, and we want to define that whatever routes that do not exist, and we do that using this asterisk, okay, we want to send a message in JSON format. So now we need to use a request and a response, okay, and I'm now using a shorter version. So here I use the full word, and here I'm using the shorter version. Normally pros go with the shorter version. I like to go with the full version because it's easier for me to understand many times. But in this case, it's so simple, you can go with whatever you prefer. So I'm using both options here, so you are aware of that. So when the route doesn't exist, we want to then send a response using JSON, as I said. So let me just finish this syntax. And what we want to do is the response in JSON format is going to be something like, I'm going to copy to be faster. I'm going to paste this. And now if I refresh, because this route doesn't exist, I will see this message instead of this generic one. And there you have it. See, tells you the URL that doesn't exist, and the user sees this message, server error, oops, API route not found, make sure the URL is correct. Because if I go here and change back to something that exists, I see the message. But if I go and try to access something that doesn't exist, I definitely cannot see it. We'll use a similar thing in our front end, but for now this is good. Looking to our folder and files, we can definitely see that we created something, but we need to do a lot more because we need to have a database. We know that, but we also need to define a document schema, and we need to make a connection to the database, and we need to connect all of that inside the brain of our application. So for the moment, let's create our Mongoose schema. Okay, MongoDB is schemaless by definition. It's going to be Mongoose that is going to define the schema of the documents that are going to be saved inside our database. So we can start by creating this. Right, inside server, let's create another folder called models, and this is the convention. So inside server folder, I want to create the models, oops, not caps lock, I'm sorry, models folder, and inside it I want to create the schema for our documents inside the database. I'm going to name all of these in a generic way, but you can name this in a more specific way. Okay, so I will define this document as document. I made a mistake. Document model.js, because this is going to be where we define how our document is going to be saved inside MongoDB. I'm gonna start by importing Mongoose because I need Mongoose, okay, for the schema. Define import Mongoose from where? From Mongoose, of course. There you have it. Okay. Now I can start defining the schema itself. I'm going to create a const called document schema, and this is going to be equal to mongoose dot schema, and make sure to use capital S. Okay, and inside I'm going to create an object, and this object will contain several other objects. I'm going to start with I will need to have three main things that are going to be saved inside the database: the month, the location, and the notes. And I will also want to have timestamps every time I add something inside the database. So I'm going to start by using month. So the month, and because I do not want to be restrictive, I'm going to use the type string, okay, not a number in this case, because the user might want to use like July 24. So that way we allow the user to type that by defining this as a string. Okay, I also want to make this field required, so I'll use the boolean of true. And now I have my first object, but I need two more. So I can simply copy paste so you see where I'm going with this. Okay, I'm gonna do a copy paste. This is super simple, and I'm gonna actually format my document. Cool. So I now have all the pieces of information that I want to save inside my database for every single document. Okay, I now just need to add the timestamps. So I need to come over here and add another object that basically say timestamps true. There you go. And I'm going to format my document one more time so you see what I'm doing. And now many times we make this mistake. We do not export whatever we are defining here, and then things break. So do not forget to export. In this case, I'm going to do export const. I'm going to call this a donation because this is going to be a blood donation. Okay, I'm going to use mongoose.model. There you have it. And this is the model is going to be donation. okay? And I also need to pass the document schema that I have over here. And this should now allow me to communicate with the database and save my documents. But this is not all. We need to make a connection to the database and a lot more. Let's continue. Right, our model is in place, but now we need to think about MongoDB connection string. For that, inside server, I'm going to create my .env file, and inside it, I'm going to have this variable, which I'm going to be calling MongoDB _ URI. Okay, this is one of the conventions. The thing is, you need to have your own your own connection string. I'm not going to show you mine. And I'm not also going to show you how to get this in case you do not know how to, but I have another video where I explain you that step by step. So if you do not know how to get this, all you have to do is to check the video that I'm about to show you and then come back to this one. Right, so this is the video that I recommend you to check if you do not know how to get your own MongoDB connection string. It's a short video, but you do not have to, well, I mean, it's not that short, but you don't have to see it all. You can just go and jump to this chapter where I teach you how to get your connection string from MongoDB. And then all you have to do is to paste that connection string. Make sure to update your password, okay, like I explained it. And then you just paste that inside the .env file. And then you can continue and follow along this tutorial. Also relevant to mention is you do not want to expose your connection string, okay? And the convention is, in case you want to push this code into GitHub, you can create at the root level of the project, you can create the .gitignore file, and inside it you can add everything that you do not want to push to GitHub. And I also added, of course, the .env file that is located inside the server folder. This way you do not expose your connection string, and this is a common practice. Before moving on and creating our connection file, database connection file, we must go ahead and actually import all of the necessary packages so we do not forget them. So I'm gonna start this copy paste. So I'm gonna import cores, and I will link below some information about cores, but essentially what cores does is allows your backend to talk to your front end, okay, basically. So you can talk from front end to backend, backend to front end without any errors. We also need to import the other package, the .env file, because for us to access that that URL, that string, that connection string, we'll need to process that information using the .env package. So let's do that. And I also need to start .env configuration file, and I have a comment for you to explain you what this is doing. So we now need to also, well, I can go ahead also and add some more stuff that I know that I'm gonna need, because I'm also needing more stuff, but this is basically something that is not so important to explain, and you can you can read this on your own, but I will be leaving some links in this video's description, okay? So we need to import, create and import our connection to the database. So let's work on that. Let's create our connection, database connection file inside our server folder. So I'm gonna select my file name, which is going to be connectdb, and it's going to be just this. And what I want to do inside here is to import Mongoose, import Mongoose from Mongoose, and now I want to really work on this connection. I'm gonna export a const called connect DB, and because we want to talk to the database, this takes time to get, so we make requests from the browser and we get responses back from the server, but this takes time, which means we need to use async. Okay, and let me just finish up this basic syntax, and now inside this we can use our try and catch statement. So try and catch statement, and the first thing that we want to do is to await, because we are using async and use async await, they always go together. So access Mongoose, and I want to access the connect. Okay, and now I can use the process, I can use process.env, so process.env, and I can access the variable name that is inside the .env file, which is MongoDB underscore URI. Okay, and then I want to console.log. I want to console log, let me just close this. I want to console log a message, so we know that we are actually connected. So we will see once again this message inside our Visual Studio Console, because remember, this is backend. Okay, the catch block, it's simple. All you want to do is to basically console log what? We want to console log an error in case there's one. So we can just do this, and we need to then exit the process. So process.exit. Okay, I think this is all good. Hopefully I'm not forgetting anything. So this should be good for now. You now need to import the recently created file. And after that, you need to initialize that connect.db. After doing that, if you run the development server, just like I did, you will notice that we get this extra message, which is the message that we have defined inside the file. See, this is the message. Okay, and this actually tells us that the connection went through successfully. So we are connected to the database now. Mongoose is now able to send the information and save it inside the MongoDB. And this is good, but we are not done yet. We need to create our custom routes, our API routes. Now it's time for us to create our custom API routes. These routes will allow us to use different methods for us to be able to perform our C.R.U.D operations inside the database. We will create these custom routes inside a separate file, and we will be using the Express router. Let's just start by going inside the server folder and create a new folder called routes. All of our custom routes will be living inside this folder. So inside that folder, create a new file called custom API routes.js. This is where we'll list all of our custom routes. And we need to import Express from Express. So not like that, just like this. Express from Express, there you go, finally. And we also need to import our model. Okay, so I'm going to import the model that I have defined in here, which is donation. Okay, so import donation. Okay, and I'm importing this from our models folder and document model. And I need to add the .js file at the end, otherwise I think it will not work. So let's continue. As I mentioned it, we are going to be using the built-in router that comes inside the express. So I'm going to define a const router, okay, and I'm going to set it equal to express.router. There you have it, and now we are able to use it throughout this file. Okay, cool. Let me just close all of this so you see it better and leave it like that. So basically we want to create all of our CRUD operations here. So create, read, update, and delete. So the first thing is to create a new document. So I'm gonna type create a new document. And I'm gonna be using the router, and because I want to create something, I need to use the post method, okay? So I'm gonna define router.post. So if you want to create something, you need to use the post method, and I need to access my root route, and it's a database operation, so I need to use async, of course, async, and I need to use a request, a browser request, and I will have a server response. So let me just finish up this basic syntax. There you go. And in here, I'm gonna try to do stuff, okay? I will basically use the try and catch block. So try and catch. And what I want to do is to check if I have the month, the location, and the notes. If I have that information that's inside the model and it's required. If I have it, great, I'm gonna create the document. Else, I'm gonna throw an error. Okay, that's basically the idea. So the try part is simple. I'm gonna use an if statement, okay? And I'm gonna check basically if the request.body.month, in this case I'm checking if there's no request.body.month. So if this field, the month, is not populated, this is why I'm checking if there's not. I cannot really move on and save the document inside the database. But this is not the only one that I want to check. I want to do that for all of them. Also for the location, and of course also for the notes. And you need to remove this. Okay, cool. So now if I have something, okay, in this case, if I do not have this, okay, if one is missing or more than one is missing, I want to return a response with a status code. So this is the method, and the code is 400, the generic code. And I definitely want to use the send method, and inside that I'm gonna have an object with a message, and this message will say something like all fields are required. Because remember, we defined if I check the model, we defined that all the fields are required. So that's what I'm checking, okay? And if one or more than one is not populated, we send this message, okay? This is what we are doing so far. But if I have all of the details, I'm gonna create a new const called new donation, new blood donation, and I'm gonna have this object where my month is actually coming from my request.body.month, so whatever the user inputted, and this is not semicolon, this is just a comma. I'm gonna copy this and I want this to be the location, and this one the same, the location, and the last one it's going to be the nodes. I mean, possibly the nodes should not be required. Okay, you might not want to have nodes, but in this case I'm saying they are all required, so it's up to you. After that, I need to create my const donation. You can call it whatever you want. I'm going to call it donation. And I need to finally await, because every time you use a sync, you need to use await. They go together, as I mentioned it before. And now I'm going to access my donation. And this donation is actually coming from my model. Okay. And I want to create. Okay. This is the method. And what I want to create, it's my new donation. So I'm grabbing whatever the user typed in, and I'm going to be saving this inside the database. That's the goal. And basically, if everything is just okay, I'm going to return a response with a status code of 201. Okay. And I will be sending my donation. This one right here. And this should be enough for me to save the data inside the database as long as all the fields are populated. Okay. Of course, that if something is wrong, we need to console log the error. So console.log the error. So if there's something wrong, and we can actually access the message. Error message, exactly. Okay, and we send, of course, the response back with a status code of 500, which is the generic internal server error code, and we send a message. The send method, I'm gonna have an object passing the message, and this message is going to be whatever we are getting back from this error message. Okay, and this should be good, so we can now test this. But remember, we are using the post method, so apart from the get method, you need a way for you to test your API routes. You can use Postman or Thunder Client, and I will be using Thunder Client because I have it here. So let's test this to see if this is working or not. Well, before testing our code, we of course need to import that custom API routes inside our brain of this application, and we need to define our custom routes. So basically what I want to do now, before going and do this testing, I can just import my custom API routes. Okay, and I want to import this from where? I need to access my routes folder, right? And I want to access this file. Now I have access to this, okay, but this is not enough. I now need to we can do it somewhere here, something like this, custom API routes. Okay, somewhere here is good, and we can I can make the app to use this. Okay, so app caps lock app.use, and I'm defining that I want to use after my localhost 8135 that we have here. I want to define what route I'm going to use to access this. So in this case, you can go whatever you want, but I'm gonna call this one is going to be blood donations, and this makes sense to me in this project. But I also need to pass the custom API routes here for this to work. So this is my custom API routes. I think I'm not forgetting anything, and now we should be able to test this. So let's see if this is working or not. I am writing the code, explaining it to you, and recording at the same time. And that means I actually forget basic stuff sometimes. As you can see, I have an error message here. But this is simple. I simply forgot to export my router. Therefore, I wanted to use in here, but I can't because this file was not exported. So let's export this really quickly. Export default router. And this should now, as you can see, boom, now we are back to business. So my point here is I haven't really prepared this tutorial really much, okay? So I'm writing the code and recording and doing everything in one go. So if you know this stuff, you probably think, okay, this guy is forgetting stuff. It's possible, but guess what? This is also real life, and you will face this when you try to use this project as a blueprint to create your own projects. And you need to go through this because at the beginning, all of these error messages are just frightening. But then you start to understand them and you start to be able to overcome of these problems. And that's really good. This is when you build up your confidence. So this is all good, no problem. Let's just continue. We now want to test this code and see if this is actually able to create a new document inside the database. So this is what we are going to do now. So for that, I'm going to be using the Thunder client, and I'm going to make a new request, okay? And this is a post method because remember, we want to create stuff inside the database. So we need to access localhost 8135, which is our localhost port, but we define it here that it's going to be that/blood donations. So what we want to access is actually this. This is why I left this comment here for you to have a look. So I want to then go to this route, right? And I want to make a post request. So I'm gonna click just body, and I'm gonna create a very simple object with my field. So it's going to be month, okay? The next one is going to be location. And this is what we have defined inside the model, if you remember, okay? And finally, we also need to have our notes, okay? Notes. These are all strings, if you remember. So I'm going to push this button, and I will get my response details inside this box. And this should be all fine, okay? And we got it. So basically, this is what we saved inside the database. This is the ID, which is created automatically by MongoDB. And we'll use this ID to identify specific documents in order to delete them or update them, okay? And this is our timestamp, because when you create a document, you get the created at and the updated at exactly the same, of course, but then if you edit the document, this updated at will be updated, okay? So basically, this is all good, and we know that because we got this information. We cannot really see it in the browser yet because we haven't defined a route to get all of the documents, but that's what we are going to do right now. As I just said, we cannot really access this yet because we have not yet created our custom API routes to read all of the documents inside the database. So let's fix this, because if I refresh, I keep getting this error. So let's just fix that. So the comment is going to be read all documents. Docs stands for documents, as you might know. And what I want to do is to use the get method. And I want to go inside my database and get whatever content is inside my donations. Okay, so let's do that. So router, the method is get, as I said, and I want to get the root, okay? And one more time, this is, of course, as usual, async operation. and we need a request from the browser and a response back from the server. Okay, this is very similar for all of them actually. So, and then I'm gonna finish up this basic syntax, and inside I can really first I can now start using my try and catch statement. So try and catch statement, and what I want to try is I want to actually save whatever it's inside my model, and I want to save it inside a const called donation. So const donations, okay, this is where the information will be saved, and this equals to await because we are using async as I mentioned it before, and I'm accessing my donation which is coming from my model, and I want to use the find method, okay, and I want to find everything, so I'm gonna use the empty object, okay. After this is done, I want to return what? I want to return the response back, of course. So return the status, it's going to equal the 200 status code, and I want to turn this into a JSON format, okay? So JSON, there's a typo already there, JSON. Oh, come on, let's go, let's do it, done. JSON, and in here, I'm gonna be defining that I want two things. I want my count, and count is going to be my donations. So whatever I have inside these donations variable, and the length. And if you understand basic JavaScript, this length method, it's nothing new to you for sure. And I also want to get my data. So we'll be accessing data, and data, it's a standard naming convention for whatever we get inside the database. And this data is actually coming from my donations. And this should be fine for now. What I now need is, this is good. I mean, so the try block is good. So I'm accessing everything. I'm accessing my model, grabbing and saving everything inside the variable. And then I want to check how many results I have, and I'm gonna save everything inside data. So now the catch part is the usual stuff. So console.log, and I want to console log the error, and I want to access the message inside the error. Nothing new here as usual. And then I want to send, in case there's an error, I want to send the response back, of course, with a status code of 500, which is error, server error. And I want to send a message, so message, and the message is going to be error.message. Okay, this should be good. So now if I now refresh the page, I should get an empty array because I have no documents yet because I deleted. Oh no, sorry, I have one, so I didn't delete the document. I thought I deleted it. Anyways, so I have it, and this is what we have. And now we can actually try to create another one and refresh the page, and you will see two. So the count is now 1. This is the data that we are accessing, which is an array that contains one single object at the time. But we can go here and go to a post, okay, and we can just change this to 2, 2, and 2, and this is a post method to the same API route, send. We got the same information back, and now if you refresh, there you have it. You have 2. And because this is here we are doing the post method, but here we are doing the get method. So the get method can be done inside the browser, and we can actually do the same here. We can change this to a get method to do the exact same thing that we are doing here. And if I press send, as expected, we get the same information. Okay, so this is all working. Let's continue developing our API custom routes. Okay, in case you are a bit lost and you don't know what C.R.U.D actually means, C.R.U.D just means the C means create, the R means read, the U means update, and the D means delete. So the C.R.U.D operations, as you normally, as that's how they are normally called, actually mean all of the operations that you can do inside the database. And if you think about it, pretty much all the applications have some sort of C.R.U.D operations. Think about a social media. Think about TikTok. You can create content by, I don't know, writing something or uploading a file, whatever. When you're watching your own, when you're going to your own profile and checking other people's profile, you're reading the information there. But you can also update your own information, or you can delete some photo, whatever. So basically, in full stack development, C.R.U.D operations, in a simple way, are always there. Okay, you can build up in terms of complexity, but all full stack applications have some sort of C.R.U.D operations behind scenes. Okay, and we already did the creating a new document. So we did this with this using post method. We are already reading all of the documents here. We are reading all of the documents. But guess what? We have access. We now need to we are reading all the documents. But how can I read just this document in particular? I need to access this document, and I'm going to be accessing this document by its ID. So for me to either read just one single document, or to update one single document, or to delete one single document, I firstly need to identify it, and we use something that is unique. Okay, so we know that we are getting the correct information. In this case, MongoDB always creates this ID for us automatically, and it's going to be always unique. And we are going to use this in order to be able to continue developing our custom API routes, and we'll next read one single document by grabbing its ID. So that's what we are going to do right now. Time to get one single document by its ID. So for that, we are going to get, okay, still using the get method, in this case, get one single doc by its ID. Okay, this is what we want to do. So we can select just this document, or this document, or whatever document we have inside the database. So that's what we want to do. So now we are going to do the same thing. We need to now go and use the router and use again the get method, but this time we are not going to access just the root, but we are going to add this, and this represents whatever ID we might have. And of course, as you know by now, it's an async operation, which means we need to have a browser request and the server response. Okay, also the same stuff that you know by now, and this is the basic syntax. So now we have this parameter here, the ID, whatever ID we have in our URL. So I want to create a const for this ID, and how do I access this ID? I can access my request, okay, and my request I can access the parameters, so params. There you go. We can use this property right here, okay. And now we can create another const for the donation, blood donation, and we need to now await and access our model donation, and use a method called find by ID. Find by, I don't know why it's not getting suggested. So let's see if this works, but should work. And I can now pass whatever ID that I'm grabbing from my URL params. And if this is all good, I'm gonna return, of course, a response. And you know already the status code for this 200, that's it. And you also know that you need to send it in a JSON format, okay? And what do you want to send? It's this donation, of course. So this is all we need, I believe. This looks good to me. So this is the part where everything is correct, but I forgot. I made a basic silly mistake. This is all good, but I need to use the try and catch block, okay? So this was all good, but I was forgetting to use the try and catch block, okay? So let's see. Okay, this now looks good to me, and now we can actually work inside the catch part. So I can definitely console.log, okay? And what do you want to console.log? The usual thing, error.message, okay? And as usual, if there's an error, you want to send the status code of 500, which indicates server error, and that you want to send an object, a message, and this message is going to be whatever error message we get, okay? And this means that we can now, I believe, read one single document. And if I now go and in front of this, I add my unique param, which is this one. I need to select everything, copy. And if I go here, and this is again a get method, so that's why I can do it in the browser. If I press enter, I think I will see only the object with a month 2. And it does work as expected. So this is my param, whatever param I'm getting here, which is the ID, and that's it. And this can be done for any other object. So I get all, but now I want this first object. I can go here and I can do this. Boom. So now this is all working. So we are now able to read a specific document. Here we are reading all of the documents inside the database. Now we are reading one specific document when providing the specific ID. So now let's continue and use again this ID to update one single document inside the database. Okay, time to update one single document by its ID. So update. Okay, cool. So we now want to do something that actually it's similar to this. So I'm gonna actually copy paste, and then I'm gonna delete this and reuse the try and catch. And this is the basic syntax. But this time the method is not get, we want to update, therefore we need to use the put method. Okay, cool. And we are going to access the ID one more time and make a request and use the request and response, all of that. Inside the try and catch, we now need to check one more time if we have all the information like we are checking here. So I think I can actually copy paste this to be a tiny bit faster, and I'm gonna paste it right there. So I am inside here and I'm checking if I have all of this information, okay? And if I don't, I will send a status code back of 400, okay? But I want to use a better message. So instead of that message, I'm just gonna copy paste another one that I have prepared that better fits what we are doing here. Okay, cool. After doing that, so let me just first format my document. Okay, I can now go ahead and grab my ID, const ID. So I can go after. This is a bit complex. You need to make sure that it's not complex. You just need to pay attention. You need to make sure that you put the code in the correct place. So I'm gonna have my const ID again, okay? And one more time, I'm grabbing this from my request params, okay, cool. Now that I defined that, I can define another const for the result. This is just a standard convention name where I will be awaiting for my model, donation model. And I want to use a slightly different method this time. This time it's going to be find by ID and update. Find by ID and update. I don't know why I'm not getting this suggestion, but no worries. And I want to pass two things. I want to pass the ID and my request dot body. So request dot body. So all the information basically. Now I need to check if I have a result or not. So if in this case I want to check if there's no result. Okay, if there's no result, I cannot proceed. So if there's no result, I'm gonna return. So return. I want to return a response, of course, with a status code of not found because I do not have the information. Therefore, 400. Okay. As usual, I want to send this in a JSON format with a message. And this message is going to be something like, let me just copy paste because it's easier than typing. The message is blood donation not found. Does it exist? Okay. But if there's a result, okay, if there's a result, then I want to return. What do I want to return? I want to return a response back, of course, as usual. And the status code is going to be 200, the generic one that we have been using. And I want to send one more time a message. And this time the message is going to be message. And this time the message is going to be blood donation updated. So if things go right, we will see this information. If things go wrong, we will see this information. Now it's time for us to handle the error. And I think I'm just gonna copy paste this to be a tiny bit faster because this is pretty much the same. So I have error, I console log my error message, and I send a response back with the status code 500 with a message which is whatever error message that we are getting here. So I can actually just format my document, and this, I think this is all good. So let's then try this. Because it's not a get method, we need to then update this. So I'm gonna copy this. I'm gonna open Thunder client. It's an update, so we need to use the put method, and I'm gonna I provide the full URL, and I'm providing this unique ID that we see here. And the body, I want to provide everything. I actually need to provide everything. And this is going to be month. And in this case, it's going to be up. And I need to do the location. It's the other way around, sorry. Location. And notes. Notes, and I need to get rid of this last comma. And if I send, we got the message, blood donation updated. So let's see if we now get that update. And as you can see, it is updated. So one more custom API route working. And all we have to do is to do the last one, which is the delete method to select one specific document and delete it by its ID. Let's write a code that deletes one single document by its ID. So I'm gonna copy paste this, okay? And I'm gonna get rid of everything inside, okay? And this time it's not going to be a put method, but it's going to be a delete method, okay? Delete, okay? We still need to get access to the ID, and this part is all good. And now we can go and try to use our try and catch statement. To be faster, I'm gonna start with the catch part, which is going to be the same. So the catch part is pretty much the same. So we console log the error message and we send that to the user as well in case there's an error. So in the try part is where we again get our const ID as usual. So we can grab it, okay? And now we need to create the result variable, and we can actually use this because I have it here. We just need to change it slightly. So there you have it. So const result equals await donation, and the method it's going to be find by ID and delete this time, and delete, and we only need to provide just the ID, so we identify what document we are trying to delete, okay? And then we check if there's a result or not, like we did here. So we are going to check if there's a result or not. So I'm just grabbing the code and copy pasting to be a bit faster. We are checking if there's a result or not. It's the same thing, but the message blood donation not found, does it exist? Well, we can use the same message, because if you cannot delete a document, it means possibly that the ID is wrong, so this message is still accurate. And if there's if there's a result, then we return a response, of course, the same stuff. As you can tell by now, it's always pretty much the same thing. We just need to slightly change the methods, okay? And what we want to do is to send the 200 status code, also as usual, and use the send method to send a message, okay? Nothing new here. And if things go right, the message that I want to send is this one. Blood donation deleted, because we are trying to delete a blood donation. And this, I think it looks good, so let's just format the document and let's then try. So now I want to grab this one more time, because if I now go and check all, so I do not provide the ID, as expected, I have these two, but I want to delete the one that we updated. We can delete this one. Okay, so we can go here and delete this one. So I'm gonna open Thunder Client. I'm gonna go to my last request, doesn't really matter. It's not a put method, but it's a delete method instead. And the ID is this one, okay? And if I now send it, blood donation deleted, which means if I now refresh, I should not have this document. I only should have this one. So I'm going to refresh, and there we go. So now we know for sure that all the API routes are working. And this means that our backend part is pretty much done. We now need to build up the front-end part, the UI and all of that. We want the users to be able to do all of this throughout the UI, okay? So that's what we need to do next. In case you don't remember, this is the web application that we are building, okay? We have just finished developing the backend part of our application. Now it's time to move on and to develop the front-end part, the UI and all of that good stuff. And this is the final result. I have a note over here saved inside my database, and if I click, as you can see, I have this information. So it is really important for you to focus on this part. I would like you to invite to donate blood in your own country. And of course, in case you haven't done yet, consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. Welcome back to part 2 of this project. This is where we will start developing our front end. And if you remember, we created the server folder that we have been developing, and we also created this client folder initially. But because I found out this guide, which should allow us to install all of this in a faster way, I'm gonna actually delete this client folder, which was empty. And as you can see, I am now at the root level of our project. And in here, I do want to run these commands. So I'm gonna start by copy pasting this, okay, and replacing what's necessary. So instead of my project, of course, I want to name this folder client like we were doing before. And then I can actually copy paste this bit as well. Okay, and I'm gonna press enter. Okay, do not worry. Okay, let me proceed. Okay, it's doing it, so it's done. So now we actually created the client folder again, but this time using Vite, we created this initial configuration. Don't worry if you do not know how to do this, because among other links, I will be sharing this link with you so you can actually test this on your own, and you should. So now what you want to do is to follow these instructions. You are inside the root level and you want to cd into client. So cd client, just following the instructions there. Let me see if I can show you. Once inside client, you need to run npm I or npm install to actually create the node modules folder. So I'm going to do npm I, press enter. And this should create the node modules folder that I need and do all of the installations that are necessary. So let's just wait until this finishes and then we can proceed. Okay, installation is done. We now get our node modules folder, but we are not going to run our development server just yet. So we can and must cd to our project, but we are already inside our project, so this is all good. So now it's time for us to start installing Tailwind, and for that we need to run this command. So I'm gonna copy paste that inside the client folder and I'm gonna install this, and let's wait. Time to move on to the next step, which is to run this command. Okay, and we are doing that. Shouldn't take too long. Okay, it creates new files, as you can see. So all good, so far all good. And now it's time to go to our Tailwind config file that we have here, created automatically. Okay, and all we have to do is to update this content. But to be simply faster, I'm gonna copy paste everything. I'm gonna select everything and paste everything, so I am sure that I do not mess up. Next, it's time to add the Tailwind directives to our CSS. I'm gonna just copy. I'm gonna go inside source and I'm gonna look for index.css and I'm gonna delete whatever it's inside this file and paste that, like we can see here in the instructions. So looks like we could now run our development server one more time, but I want to go to the app and I want to use this code inside app.jsx. Okay, and what I want to do is to delete whatever it's inside this React empty fragment, paste this. I'm gonna take the chance to delete all of this that I know that I won't use. Okay, and now I can add a few more classes, so I can do like text center, font bold, and all I'm doing is actually the font bold already. All I'm doing is using Tailwind CSS classes, and I can actually change the color to, I don't know, text green 500, whatever. So now I can actually run my development server and I should see my home page with this. And if I see these classes getting applied, of course that means that Tailwind is actually working inside my React project. So I can go ahead and I can run npm run dev, and I can tell right now that this is working. I see every classes. So if I remove the underline, okay, you can see that this updates. So I now have definitely access to Tailwind CSS classes, and I can start working and do my stuff. This is great. Let's then continue. Right. Before moving on and developing our front end, what I want to do now is to do the usual file cleanup. So the first thing that I want to do is actually go inside the source, and the app.css, this CSS file, we won't need it. So I'm simply gonna delete it. Boom, done. This is the main file for our front end, okay? And the name is actually main. So this means that whatever ID it's in here needs to be a match to our HTML. And just to prove you that, I'm gonna change this ID to, this is just to prove you the concept. So now my app crashed because this ID is not the same. So all I want to do is actually get this and go to my main file and change it in here. And when I save this, because this is unsaved, when I save this, we should see the app coming up again. Boom, it works. So this is just a simple information, but we will use this file. We will develop this file. We will work in here. The index file, I mean, you could add meta tags and stuff, but we don't really want to do any of that in this tutorial. So I think this is good for now. So this is done. This is done for the moment. This is our home page, of course. So what else can we do? I think this is okay for now. We'll not remove the favicons or anything. This Vite image favicon, we leave it. So that's all good. And this index file will not be populated because we'll do pretty much everything using Tailwind CSS classes. We'll use this to add just a tiny bit of custom CSS, but when the time comes, I will explain you in detail. So let's close this, okay? And now what I actually want to do is to extend the theme. And what I want to definitely extend, it's the colors. So probably you notice it that I'm using like a custom color, in this case a custom red color, and I will also be using a custom light gray color. So that means I can extend the theme, which means this will give me the chance to use my custom colors like Tailwind CSS colors. And all I have to do is to just copy paste one object inside this extend object. And just like that, I think we have access to this color, and we can test. We can try to use that custom red color in our title. So I can go here and text to be custom, and as you can see, I get the suggestion which tells me it's gonna work. If I refresh, there you have it. So the point is, if you have colors that you're going to be using throughout the website, you want to define them inside your Tailwind config file. So you can use just your color name instead of passing your X code or whatever code. So this is all done. This is all good. So let's continue and let's think about what we need to do in order to create the UI that will allow the user to perform all of the C.R.U.D operations that we were building and testing using the backend. Okay, just like we did in our backend part, we need to now install a few dependencies using npm. So I'm gonna install all of these dependencies, and when the time comes, I will give you a brief explanation on them. Okay, for now, I'm just gonna run npm I, and I'm gonna need Axios to fetch data. I'm gonna use Notistack. This will send some message, UI message to the user when an action takes place, and can be a success message or error message. We need to handle our routing because this is pure JavaScript. Sorry, this is pure React.js. Okay, so we need to go and use the React router DOM. This is the package that will allow us to navigate between pages. And we will also need to use some icons throughout the application, mainly the edit icon and the delete icon, and I think these are the main ones. So I think I'm not forgetting anything. I'm just gonna press OK and let's wait until this finishes. So now let's think about the organization necessary for us to build up the front-end part. Notice that we are now dealing with the front-end part, okay? This is not the back-end anymore. And this localhost port number, it's actually coming from the front-end part. There you have it, see? So this is not the back-end part anymore, but the back-end is still available there. But we are going to develop the front-end part. So basically we will have routes for the front end. We'll have pages, and every time the user accesses the page throughout, can be done obviously manually using the URL, but typically it's done by clicking something. We want to render a specific component. That means we need to organize our source folder. Okay, we have this that came with the installation, but inside source folder we are going to need 3 more folders. The first one is going to be our components, and components, and you are familiar with this already. The second one, it's going to be our pages, so our front-end routes, and I'm gonna have one more folder where I will have a function that will help us with something that makes the UI look better. But for now, I'm just gonna create this folder, utils folder. I like to do this organization first so I do not forget things, okay? So it's up to you the way you do stuff, but I like to do it this way. Now, this app.js file is where we will list, where we will import our pages and our components and all of that, and then we will use them inside the return. So we do not have yet the pages and the components, but I decided to start by creating this first. So, and of course the app will crash, but we will handle that as we go. So what I'm gonna do now is to create, I think I'm gonna just start, I'm gonna start by creating the basic for the components and the pages. So the components, I'm gonna start there, and I'll have plenty of them. I'm gonna have the component called back2.jsx, back2.jsx, and this will allow the user to go back to, of course. And I will start by creating the basic stuff, but I will have more components. So I think I can use simply RFC. Let's see, there you have it, back2. I'm gonna delete this, this is unnecessary. I'm gonna leave it like this. The next component in line is going to be the card, the single card. So I'm gonna call it card.jsx, and I'll use RFC and delete this. Okay. Next one, it's going to be the card grid. So our single cards will live inside the card grid. So card grid.jsx, RFC. I'm using this shortcut, okay, to be a bit faster. And all I'm doing is to create the basic structure for these components, okay? Then I'll go back to it and I will create the actual code. You could go with a footer, but I will not work on the footer, but I will go and work with the header component, the header.jsx, RFC. And I'm gonna stop this video and I'm gonna create all of this basic structure for all of the necessary components and pages, so you don't have to wait until I do this. Yeah, because I think it's just boring. So I'll see you in a bit. Right, as you can see, I have all the basic components, the basic structure for all of the components that we are going to need throughout this part of the project. And I also created the basic structure for all of the pages. In order to be faster to identify what does what, I created these pages with names that I think they are meaningful and easy to understand. So this is going to be the create page, the delete page, the update page, and the home page where we'll actually build the UI. In terms of the components, we'll have plenty of them. We'll have a card grid where all the single cards will live inside. Each card will also have a back to button, so the user, after clicking on one of the single documents, can go always back. We'll have a header at the top, and we'll have a custom simple loader, so while we are doing the fetch request, this loader will be displayed for a fraction of a second because this takes time. The model component is what we get when we click on top of the document, and we get this model as I showed you in this demo, in the project demo. And we'll also have a custom not found component. So if the front-end route doesn't exist, like something /sales, which won't exist, we'll render a custom not found page. And this is it. So now we can use this because we have the basic structure. We can move on and go to our app.jsx file where we will define our routes and all of that. So let's do that right now. Time to define all of our routes inside this file. And as I said, when the user reaches a given route, we want to actually render a given component. So all I'm going to do now is a copy paste so I can import all of this. Just ignore these error messages because we are importing stuff and we are not using it inside our function. Let's just trust the process. This will work. So now it's time for us to actually start using it. And we have all the imports that are necessary. Okay. So first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to define my router. Okay. And this router is coming from here. Of course, you probably know this. I'm not sure if you do know this or not, but I'm going to assume that you do not know, and I will give some brief explanations. Now I'm adding the header, and notice when I use these imports, the error goes away, and that's the way it's supposed to work. So now I'm going to define my routes component, and inside I want to actually copy paste all of the necessary routes that I know that I will be needing. And I'm gonna format my document. Okay. I did a lot of copy paste in this file because there's no point for you to see me doing this. All you need to understand that is that we are importing the browser, the package that we installed from React Router DOM, which will allow us to navigate between pages internally. We are importing pages and components, and this is easy to see because the folders have a nice naming convention, so you will understand that. And so basically whenever the user reaches the root route, which is this case, okay, we'll see the home component. As you can see, we see the home component, okay? And if I go to create, so if I change here to create, we'll see the not found. Fantastic. Why is this? We now see the not found component because in fact this route doesn't exist. Pay attention. The create is this route right here. So this tells us that we always have the header in every single page, and that's what we wanted because we imported and used the header component outside the routes, which means regardless of the page, we'll always have the header. And if we wanted to have the footer, we'll do the same thing in here. So outside the routes, but we won't have the footer. Okay. But because this route doesn't exist, we are actually rendering the not found component because this is what we are defining here. So for whatever route that doesn't exist, we want to render the not found component. Okay, so the routing is actually working. So if I want to access the create page and render the create component, I need to change this URL. And that need to be to blood donations and then /create. And now we have the create component. And if you remember, we defined this previously, okay, in our backend, okay? So pay attention to that. If you do not really remember where we defined this, time for you to go back in the code, because this is how you actually learn, by making mistakes and fixing these silly mistakes. This is when you actually get to feel how things work in conjunction. So do that in case you do not understand how we are using this in here. Okay, so this tells me that everything is working. So I can now go to the edit, but notice the following. Edit, but if I do not provide my parameter, my ID in this case, I go back to the not found, because we are saying that the route actually needs to be blood donations /edit/ID. So now we can pass whatever string we want, and we get to the update. And the same goes to the delete. So we change from edit to delete. And guess what? All our routes are working. Of course, we do not have the code and we are not displaying anything on the page, but this is how I can tell you in detail why things are connected in a given way. And this is what you should do on your own before moving on. Otherwise, you might be confused. I don't know your React.js level, if you're a beginner or not, but this is a beginner's tutorial, so I'm assuming that you don't know much about it. So let's go and let's continue. Okay, the first component that we actually want to develop is the header component, because the header, as I showed you, is going to be visible on any page of the application. So we'll start by developing this component in particular, so we start to see something on the page. So as you can see, this is getting like a bit messy for you. If you're a beginner, you can always close these folders so this gets a bit cleaner, and we can actually use a shortcut, and I can look for my header component, okay, and I'm gonna close that, okay, and now inside header I will start working, and we'll see the changes immediately because the header is already connected. So whatever I write, so I can do blah 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 and save, and we'll see it reflected immediately. So that's the point. Okay, cool. So the header is where we'll provide links for the user to navigate. Therefore, we need to use the link that is coming from React Router DOM. Okay, if we were doing this full stack stuff in Next.js, the routing part is definitely easier, but we are not. We are just focusing in plain React, which means we need to handle our routing this way. But it's a nice and important skill still to have. So I'm going to import my link, and this link will come from React Router DOM. Okay, now I can link stuff and people can visit stuff. Great. So let's be semantic. So instead of a div, let's use the header tag. Okay. And I'm gonna style this header tag right away so I don't forget it. I'm gonna have my custom red BG color. So custom red, and this is not working. Custom red, there you go. We see the changes immediately. Cool. I'm gonna give a text white so it's more readable, padding to all sides of 8. I want this to be fixed, always fixed. So I'm gonna give the fixed and a higher z index. In this case, 30 is fine. The width needs to be full and the height needs to be auto. Okay, cool. We start to see something. Now, inside the header, we need to have a div. Okay, I'm gonna have a div. Okay. Inside this div, we'll have a link and a bit of text, but I'm gonna style this div right away, and I'll be using flexbox. Therefore, flex, I want this to start as a flex column, because on smaller devices, things stack on top of each other, but on MD breakpoint onwards, I want to change this to flex row, which means things go side by side. Also on MD, I want to justify my content between, okay? And also on MD, I want my items to go to the center. And this MD actually means it's on MD breakpoint and onwards. So anything bigger than MD or as big as MD breakpoint. The width, it's going to be full. And I want to restrict this from enlarging too much. Therefore, I'm going to use a max width with a custom value of 1440. And you can play with this number to see what this does. And when this max width is in usage, I want to center things in the center. That's why MX Auto. I'm going to change this to view word wrap so you see what I'm typing. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to get to use this link that I'm importing right at the top, which means this is going to be clickable. And when the user clicks in here, I want to send the user to what? To the root, okay? And inside, I'm gonna have a p tag, and this p tag will say something like give blood today. Cool. And I'm gonna style this p tag right away. So class name, and I'm gonna style it with a font of bold, text to Excel. On LG breakpoint onwards, I want the text to grow to 4XL. These are all Tailwind CSS classes, so you can check those on your own. But the thing is, I also want to use this emoji that I'm gonna copy paste. So I wanna use this emoji, see? But I do not want to show this emoji on smaller screens, okay? So we need to make a little bit, we need to do some magic trick. I'm gonna use a span tag, and I'm gonna put this emoji inside it, okay? And what I want to do is to style it. So this emoji is never shown on smaller screens, okay? So that means this emoji is actually going to be hidden, which is the Tailwind CSS class, but on MD onwards, I want to make it inline block, and I want to give a margin right of 2. So this means because we are on a smaller screen, we do not see the emoji, but if I enlarge the window, there you go, see, it's working. But something is wrong, this alignment. So let me just see what is wrong. Okay, just like before, like recording the video, typing, looking at the screen, explaining things in a different language makes me make silly mistakes. This is not working because I'm giving the margin to the wrong side. I'm giving the margin to the right side when I want to give the margin to the left side. So this is this basic. So yeah, this happens, trust me, people will make these mistakes. You will make these mistakes. No worries. Let's then continue. So now what I want to do is to add a simple paragraph, but for the sake of not being too slow, I'm just gonna copy paste, and there's nothing really impressive here. You can definitely check this and understand every single bit of code that is going on here. So now we have the header to every single page, and if I try to access a route that doesn't exist, I will see that information, but I will also see the header, and I see the header, and I do not see that information because that actually is below. So if I, just to prove you that, if I go to the not found and I give it a class name and I give it a margin top and a custom, oh, not caps lock, I'm sorry, margin top and a custom, and this is how you customize your classes in Tailwind CSS, 150 pixels. And what the heck am I doing? I need to give a padding top and not a margin top. And now I see the not found. Okay, so yeah, we do have the header in every single page, trust me, and we can see the information if the page doesn't exist. Cool, so let's continue. As you can tell for sure, I went ahead and developed this custom not found component. And this is simple, you can do whatever you want. I just do not want to spend much time on this because this is something that you will do for your own needs. But the point now is, like, every time we access something that doesn't exist, the front-end route like sales, we always get this message. And we are displaying this image, this information, and when the user clicks here, will be redirected to the donations page, to the create a donation page that doesn't exist yet. So if I click, I get to the route, but I have no content yet. So this is what you want to do, or I mean, this is something that represents what you want to do, and you can see the code over here. But if you do not understand this code, you should play with the code. And don't worry, I will be linking this code in this video's description. So let's focus on what really matters, which is building up the UI that will allow the user to perform all of the CRUD operations. Another not so important custom component in terms of logic is the back to button. Basically, we'll use our home page to render whatever blood donations that we have inside our database. Those donations will live inside a card that will be living inside a grid card, okay? And when the user clicks on any donation, we'll open details and we'll see also the back to button. And this button, when clicked, will take the user back to the home page where all the donations are listed. So basically, we want to create this component that always takes the user to the same destination, which is the root page of our application, the front page, the home page. Okay, so because of that, all I'm gonna do is to copy paste two imports that are super simple. We know them by now. The link component that we used before, and one specific icon that is coming from React icons. In this package we have already installed it. Okay, so this return I'm gonna simply copy paste because this is super simple. There's no point to spend much time here. Now I have this arrow because this is not defined. Of course it's not defined. I need to pass it inside the back too. Okay, now we have this, and destination is missing parameter destination. So what is wrong now? Let me think. Okay, I think view the problem, quick fix. I think this is a aslint problem. So disable, okay. This is the easy way for you to go around this aslint problem. So, and if you remove this comment, you will get back to your problem and you can try to solve this on your own. Okay, I solved this in another project, but I'm not gonna do this in here because it's not so important. It's not the focus. So I'm gonna click again quick fix and disable React prop types for the entire file, which will cause to send the arrow away. Okay, this is good. This is done. Let's move on to the next component. Okay, the next component is the loader component. And this component will be visible only for a fraction of a second. So basically later we'll be using Axios to make a fetch request, and while that is going on, which is going to take a split of a second, we'll display whatever content is inside the loader component. And once again, because this is so damn simple, I'm not gonna waste much time on this, and I'm just gonna copy paste this. And of course, you definitely understand everything that is going on. If you do not understand one class or whatever, all you have to do is to Google it. It's this simple. So let's move on and continue. And the next component in line, I think we can work on the card grid. I mean, as a second thought, I think we should not work on that just yet. I think we should take a more logical approach to this. So if we go to our pages, we have the home page, and in here, this is where I will be using the use effect React hook and Axios in order to get all of the data that is inside the database. Then I will use useState to save whatever data inside the donations variable. Okay, so this is a more logical approach. So let's start by doing it this way. Okay, let me just copy paste a few imports. Okay, and we're gonna need use effect and use state as mentioned before. We need to use Axios because we are not going to use the fetch method. Therefore, we'll be using Axios package that we have installed. We want to render this custom component, the loader, for a briefly moment. And we want to have access to the backend port number that is inside, of course, the server. If you go to the config file, this is the server localhost port that you see here. So these are the imports necessary to start doing this. So now what I can do is start by, before my return, start by defining my two consts that I will need. Okay, so I'm gonna copy paste these. It's way easier and faster than typing. So we save a little bit of time. So basically, this is my donations, which is going to be an empty array to start with. And I will use this to update this, of course. And the loading will start as false, okay? But then we'll change to true, and this is what we are doing so far. So now all I have to do is to create my use effect, where I will be doing the fetching per se. So I'm gonna go in type use effect, okay? And the basic syntax is this, and you should be aware of this. This is nothing really impressive or anything. And initially, before we actually do the fetching itself, we need to set the loading to true, because this is when we are actually fetching data, and while we are trying to fetch the data, we are trying to display the loading component. Okay, so then we need to use Axios, the packages that we installed, and we need to use plenty of methods. The first one is to the get, which will tell where to fetch the data. And I'm gonna copy paste this string so I do not mess up and explain it to you. It's super simple. So localhost, then we access whatever port number that we have defined inside our backend, okay? And this is our custom API route. So basically, at the end of the day, this is what I have opened it here. And because it's a get method, well, it's not working because the server is not running, but trust me, this is what I have. The server is up and running again, as you can see, so we can now continue. Okay, now we can, after the get method, we can chain the then method. So then we want stuff to happen. So then what do we get? We get a response, right? So response, and let me just do the syntax, basic syntax. There you have it. And in here, what I want to do is to set my donations. Okay, I want to update this because I now have information, and I want to set my donations to the response dot data. Okay, and this means that now that I have I fetched the information and I updated the donations, so now whatever exists in the database is inside here, I can definitely change my loading back to false because that process of fetching the data is done. So I can put this back to false. Okay. The next thing that I can do is to use the catch method. So basically I want to catch any error that might exist, the usual stuff, right? And also the usual syntax. And I want to console log the error in case there's one, of course. Okay, error. And I want to, in this case, because you will get this situation or not, so either you get the information back or you get the error. But in both scenarios, by the end of this, we always want to set the loading back to false. And I need to add the empty dependency array, okay? I restarted both backend and front-end server for the project that we are developing because I want to make sure that I have data, I have something inside my donations, okay? So this is the project that we are developing, and now if we inspect, okay, we should go to the console, and yeah, I'm getting an array back, and guess what? This is the same information. So this is the same information, and this is the same information. Okay, this tells me that I have something inside this donations array, which means I can now access different bits of the data and use them inside the UI. We just used console log to make sure that we have some information inside the donations, okay? But our UI will also depend on that in order to render a specific UI. So what we want to do now is to actually inside our UI, so inside the return, we want to check if we have data or not. So I'm gonna change this. I'm gonna create just a React empty fragment, okay? And what we want to check basically is the donations, because this is where we are storing the data, and we want to check the length of the donations. And if this length is bigger than 0, so if there's at least one result, I want to do something else. I want to do something else. So I'm just going to create a simple syntax here so I can actually show you what I mean. Okay, this is okay. So we know because we check it, but the UI is going to check if there's data or not. So basically, if we have data like we have, we'll display this div. Else, if there's no data, we'll display the other div. Okay? So let's continue. Let's start by working on the div, which is the second one, this one, that is going to be rendered when we do not have any data inside the database. And basically we'll be displaying a background image with a title and a call to action button. So let's just style this outer div with a width of full and a height of screen, okay? So inside it, we'll have more divs, of course. So the first one, I'm gonna put it right here, and I'm gonna style it also right away, so class name, and I want this to be with full, the height to be full, and I want to use a background image. And this background image, I do not have it yet, but I'm gonna use it. I'm gonna use it right now. So I'm gonna use background, okay? Then I'm gonna pass this syntax, and I'm gonna tell that the URL is the following. So this image will be stored inside my source, then assets, okay, and then hero.png. So this is going to be my hero image. And now I'm going to use some properties to make this look better and to make this image to be displayed in the center and all of that. So I want to use the background no repeat property, no repeat, and these are just CSS classes, but this comes from CSS, but I'm just using Tailwind, the correspondent Tailwind CSS classes. The BG to be cover, okay, the BG position to be in the center, so the image is centered, the BG to be fixed, okay, and I'm gonna use flex because I will have more content inside this div, so I want to justify everything in the center, okay, and I want my items to be in the center, okay, and I'm gonna now change the view so you can see what I'm typing, and I need to add this, otherwise it's not going to work. So let's do that. As you can see on the screen, I have added the hero image inside my assets folder that lives inside my source folder. So now I will have access to this. So let's continue. a new div was added inside this div, and this div will hold the title and the call to action button. So I'm gonna style it right away. So I'm gonna need to use flex and flex call, because on smaller devices things will stack on top of each other, and I'm gonna use justify center and items to the center. Okay, I also want to give a padding of 5 to all of the sides, and I want to give a higher z index. Okay, inside I will have my h1, which I'm gonna just copy paste. There's no point to waste much time with this. This is super simple. Okay, this is the h1, and after that I'm gonna also have my call to action button, and when the user clicks that button will be redirected to the create page. Okay, that makes sense to you. And this is complaining because I have not yet imported my link from React Rotterdam at the top, so I can and should do that right away to fix that problem, and the problem is gone. Cool, let me just format my document, all good. And if you remember, I am supposed to show this when I have no results, but we do have one piece of information. Therefore, we are not seeing what we are building. So we'll continue building this, and then I will show you that this is working. Okay, let's see what we have to do next. Right after this div, before this closing div, we actually want to have another div, okay? And that div will be just a dark layer on top of the image, so the text is more readable. So what I'm gonna do is to copy paste that. This is not so hard to figure out. And one more time, format my document. Okay, and this is good. So I have all of this. I'm looking at the code. This looks good to me. All good. So what is complaining? It's the loading. Okay, the loading is not getting used yet, nor the loader. So I'm just gonna comment this out for a moment. Okay, sorry. The loading. Okay, yeah, whatever, doesn't really matter, because I better finish this and then I will show you everything in one go. Just to be easier to follow, we can now close this div and work on the div that is actually going to be responsible to display the data on the screen when there is data, and we do have data, so we'll see that in a moment. So I'm gonna start by styling it. So the width, it's going to be full. I'm going to give a padding top of 120, because remember our header is fixed, therefore I'm giving a padding top, otherwise things will go underneath the header and you won't see them, okay, like it happened before in this tutorial. And then I'm gonna, on MD, I'm gonna change the padding top to be just 100 pixels, slightly less, doesn't really matter. Okay, this is the div that will hold the data. So we'll access the data that we fetched earlier and saved inside our const using useState. So I can actually close the use effect, so things get a bit easier to read for me and for you, I believe. So now inside this div, I want to do a lot of things, of course. So this div, okay, I'm just giving some styling to the outer div, and now I'm gonna check if the loading is happening or not, because if I am fetching the data, I am setting the loading to true. See, so I actually set the loading to true before fetching the data and saving the data inside the donations. Okay, so this means the first thing that I need to check is if this loading is going on or not. So I'm gonna check loading, and if this is true, if it is loading, I then want to render my loader custom React component. Okay. Else I want to do something else, and I'm gonna have an empty React fragment, okay, because I will be rendering a lot of things. So hopefully you understand what we are doing so far, and because the error messages are gone for the moment, I believe that I can go ahead and show you the background image, because I can simply delete this document and then we'll see what we developed inside this div right here. I'm now gonna go ahead and delete this specific document so we see the backend, so we see the UI that we developed minutes ago. So I'm gonna press OK, send, blood donation deleted. So if I refresh, I get no data. That means I should now be able to see the UI that we developed, and as expected, it does work. So in case we have documents inside the database, we will not see this UI as explained. Okay, so when we have documents in the database, the UI will change and we'll have two main parts. The first one will go inside this div, and inside this div we'll have two bits of information. Actually, we'll have a call to action button, and we'll be able to see how many blood donations we have so far. So if we have 5 documents, we'll display blood donations 5, which represents the number of documents inside the database. And we'll also have a call to action button that the user can click in order to register a new blood donation. And below we'll have the card grid, and all of the individual cards will live inside this card grid. We haven't developed these components yet, but we will do later. So let's continue. So now it's time for me to work on this outer div, and I'm gonna style it right away. Okay, and I'm gonna give it a BG slate of 200. I'm gonna give it a custom height of 200 pixels. There's a typo already. 200 pixels. Okay. On MD, I want to change my height to be only 120 pixels. Okay. And I want to use flex. And I want to start with flex call for smaller. There's a typo there. Hold on a second. Flex, and I want to start with flex call, because on smaller devices we stack things on top of each other, but on medium size onwards we put things side by side, therefore flex row. Justify always to the center and items to the center. Okay, and I want to give a horizontal padding of 4. Cool. So inside this outer div, I will have 2 main divs. So I can simply create the markup for that, and let's go and work on that. So the top left corner will display the number of donations. Okay, so I'm gonna style this right away. The width, it's going to be full. The height is going to be full, and on MD the width, it's going to be just 50%, because things will go side by side as defined. Okay, and I'm gonna use flex, justify center, and on MD I want to justify start. So basically on smaller screens things are aligned to the left, on larger screens things are aligned to the center, and vertically the items are going to go in the center. Okay, so inside this div I will have a p tag, and yeah man, I'm not gonna spend much time with this. As I did before, I'm just gonna copy paste and I'm gonna format my document. So I'm just adding a p tag. Okay, nothing impressive, nothing important. So inside the other div, which I'm gonna style right away, okay, I'm gonna have a width of full, a height of full, and one more time the on MD onwards I also need to change this width to be 50%. So both take 50%, which makes 100% horizontally. Flex, justify center, so this is actually similar. And on MD, justify end. I want to push it to the right hand side this time. Items center. And inside here, I'm going to have the link that will be wrapping the button that will take the user to the create a donation page. And one more time, I'm just going to format the document. Okay. And this is it. So we do not have yet the card grid, and we should work on the card grid now because we need to add the card grid here. So let's work on that. The card grid component is a fairly simple component. We want to create a grid where all the individual cards will be living inside. So what we have to do, it's simple. Although our card component is not yet developed, I can already import that component, not using caps lock, sorry, from, and I can go here, and because it's the same level, I can go to card. That's it. Okay, const card grid. Cool. We'll pass this donations here, donations. Yeah. And we want to return a div, and this div can be styled right away. And because it's a card grid, we'll be using a grid, CSS grid. And initially this grid will have on smaller screens just one column. On MD, this grid calls will grow to 2 columns, and on larger screens onwards, this grid will grow to 3 columns. This simple. Okay. Inside the grid, then we need to map through the donations. These donations right here. Okay. And we need to use the map method, and this is just JavaScript thing. Okay, in case you do not know. And we will be checking each item. Okay. And I need to finish this syntax so I do not mess up. Okay, there we go. I think I'm not doing anything wrong. Hopefully I'm not. And in here I need to render something. So I'll have a div, and let me think. Okay, because when we use map, we need to give a specific ID to each element. So therefore, the first thing, I'm gonna add the key, and if I do not add the key, I will get a warning message inside the browser's console. So, and this time we'll use the ID that is actually coming from Mongoose. We do not have any ID defined inside our model. This is coming from MongoDB. This is coming from MongoDB, and notice it's a underscore ID. Needs to be a match to the MongoDB ID, otherwise it will break. So now I can actually style it, and I can just give a padding of 4, I guess. Okay. And I can use my card component inside this. Okay. And boom, I'm gonna then format my document, and I need to pass donation. This donation, it's my item. Okay. And I'm making a mistake already. Okay. Okay. Donation.map is missing props value. Okay, this is the as-linked error message that we had earlier. So I'm going to use again the quick fix. I'm going to disable React prop types for the entire file. And as before, the error goes away. So this is good. We don't need to spend much more time in this component. So now that we defined it and worked on the card grid, I think it's safe to go to the card itself. I was about to forget it, but we actually need to import and use our card grid custom component inside the home page. So let's do that. So I need to import, and I want to import my card grid. Okay, and I want to import this from, not getting any suggestion, but doesn't really matter. And I want to go inside my components folder, and I want to have my card grid. Now that I have it, I want to use here where I left a comment. Remember, we left a comment here so we do not forget it. And well, I mean, I can actually delete this comment, and I can just use my card grid component. And I need to pass my donations. Okay, donations, donations, and this is going to be donations. I think I'm not forgetting anything, and if something is wrong, we can always come back to here and fix the problem. But I think this looks good. I don't see any errors. This should be fine. So yeah, let's now go back and work on the card itself. I am now running again our final project, so we can look at the UI again to see what we want to build inside this custom component. And this card component is actually this card. Okay, so this card is composed of two pieces: the card itself, where we render all of these, and we have the possibility to edit and update the document or to delete it. And if we click on this card, we'll open the model. Okay, so let's start by creating this first bit, this UI. Okay, we'll need plenty of stuff for this. Okay, and this card, the first thing that I'm going to do is to pass the donation here, so we can access this information and render it inside the UI. So the first thing that I want to do is to set the show model use state. Okay, this const, because when we click, initially we do not show the model, but if we click, we show this model. So all of the logic, as you know, needs to go before the return. So I need to use the use state, therefore I'm gonna import it right away. I mean, I'm gonna, just to be faster, I'm gonna be importing all of the things that I know that I need, and I will explain them when it's necessary. So now I need to use the use state, so I can define const, and this is going to be show model, and set show model, and this is equal to the use state, and initially this is false. Okay, on click we want to change, using click event we want to change this to true. Okay, when this gets clicked. So let's now just style this outer div. So this outer div, let's give it some classes. The background, it's going to be yellow 400. I want it to have a rounded corners, so rounded LG. Padding of 5 to all sides. This needs to be relative, and on over, just on over, I want to display a shadow. So shadow, and it's going to be the XL shadow. The width, it's always going to be full. The height is always going to be full, but I want to make this height to a max height, because I do not want the cards to grow bigger than a certain amount. In this case, 600 pixels vertically. And because this card is going to be clickable, I want to use the cursor pointer so the user knows it can be clicked. So let me check the view, word wrap. Yeah, better. So you see what I'm doing. Okay. Cool. Let's continue. So still inside this div, the outer div, I want to set my on-click event. So on-click, and on-click, what I want to do basically is to change my show model from false to true. Therefore, I'm going to use an anonymous arrow function, and I'm gonna use set show model, okay, and I want to set these to true. So basically when we click, we change from false to true, and the model opens. But the model component is not yet finished, but we can do that right away. Next, we need to have this area. So this is basically a div that holds these two icons. And when the user clicks on the icons, the user is redirected to the specific page. For example, this one, the edit. If I show you, goes to the edit, okay, goes to a different route, can always go back, okay, and this similar thing happens when the user clicks delete, okay. So when these icons get clicked, we need to send the user to a different page, okay. So we will have that div, okay, that div will hold that information, and we can style it right away. So class name, we use flex. We want to justify things. Oops, where am I? Justify between, okay. And we want items to the center and padding Y of 4, so vertically, margin bottom of 4. That's it. And I'm gonna copy paste just the two links, okay. There's no point for me to spend much time here as I did before. So what we want to do is to, when the user clicks the edit icon, we send the user to this route, to this page, and the same goes when the user clicks the delete icon, as I explained to you moments ago. Okay, this should be clear by now, but just to be sure, in case you do not get where I'm getting these links from, so this URL, what I'm sending the user to, it's simple. We can simply open our app.jss file, and as you can see, we have this. I'm going to put them side by side, it's easier. So notice that in case the user wants to edit, I'm sending the user to this path, blood donation /edit/ID. And this is the same thing, but I'm grabbing the ID dynamically. That's what I'm doing here. And the same goes for the delete page, okay? The same thing. So hopefully now you understand where I'm getting these URLs. And as I mentioned it before, this _ID, it's actually coming from MongoDB, okay? Okay, we can continue, I believe, and now we can continue and keep adding the information. So we did this part, and now we want to do this red rectangle, which is the donation month. So if I go here and actually edit to say May, okay, because this is May 24, whatever. So this red area is where your date, month, and year is visible. So that's what we need to do now. So for that, I'm gonna add just one h2 tag, okay, and I'm gonna style it right away. Class name, so padding of 2 to all sides. The BG, it's my custom red color. There you have it. Text, it's going to be white to be easy to read. The font is going to be bold. I want to give it a rounded look, rounded LG, okay. A margin Y of 6, and inside this I'm gonna grab the month. So I already have access to my donation, okay. So I can now add, so I can do dot month, and I can access the month. I'm not sure if you understand, but we are looking at the final version, and this is what we are building. So we do not have yet our project open, and this is the final version. Hopefully I'm not confusing you, but I think it's easier for you to look at what we are trying to build, and then when this is all finished, I can run this project and you will see the exact same thing. Okay, so let's move on. Moving on, we now need the div to hold this information about the location. Okay, so we're gonna need the div that will contain the icon and will then access the donation dot location. So we need a div. This div class name is going to be flex justify start items to the center, gap x of 2, margin bottom of 2, and inside we can use this icon. Maybe it's not the best, but it's the one that I decided to use. Okay, and we can actually style this icon, so I can add some classes to it. Text custom red, oh come on, custom red, and the text size, it's going to be, it's going to be the icon size, but I'm using this class text size of 2XL and margin right of 1 to give a little bit of separation. We can format the document, and right below we can have our H2, and inside it, as I said, I'm gonna access my donation and the month. We are seeing plenty of red underline, which means some sort of error, and this annoys me. So we can actually get rid of this right away. So we are going to fix this the same way that we did earlier in this tutorial. So this is a as-lint situation. So what I'm going to do is to disable, like I did, the React prop types for this entire file, and that gets most of the errors message away. So let's now continue. We can move on. The next div is going to be responsible for holding all the user nodes, and you can have like a very short node, like I have, just one word, or you can have multiple nodes, which will cause this card to grow too big in terms of height. We'll have to later create a custom function to get that problem solved. For now, I'm just gonna basically add the basic structure and we'll work on that. It's a simple thing. So for now, we just need a div, and this div can be styled right away, of course, as usual, so we won't forget it. Flex justify, in this case, to the start, which means to the left, items to the center. Okay, I want to give a gap x of 2, a margin bottom of 2, and a margin top of 8, padding y of 5. Okay, this is the outer div, which will contain another h2 that can also be, of course, styled, and this time the font is going to be semi-bold only, semi-bold. Okay, and this will say something like my notes, as we can see on the right hand side of the screen, and I need to have a span in here, and this span can also be styled, margin left of 2, not 1, 2, to give it a little room. The font is going to be set back to normal, because we were setting the H2 to font semi-bold, but this part, it's going to be the font is going to be normal. And inside the span, then I can actually, oops, my mistake, inside the span, and I am inside the span, yep, we can actually access the donation dot notes. Okay, let's just format the document. All good. We need to come back to this, but for now this is good. So, and lastly, we have these timestamps, which is just one more div that contains p tags, and we will see the timestamps also. So basically we can have another div. There you have it. I'm gonna style it. Class name. I want the margin Y of 4. And I want to have 2 p tags, but this is so simple. I'm gonna copy paste so we save a little bit of time and I can explain it to you. It's super simple. So basically what we are doing here is creating a new date, okay, and passing the donation created at, in this case updated at, and we are converting this to a string, so it's way more readable. Okay, if you do not convert this to a string, this looks funny. Okay, it's not so easy to read, and this is the best way to do it in my opinion. So if we look at here, we are done with this, but we are missing the model and we need to work on the model. So we will work on the model next, but in terms of the basic structure for the single card, everything is working. So this is complaining about the model because we are importing it, but we are not yet using it. And the state is also complaining about that. So let's just add that code to finish all of this. Yep, I am changing my mind again. I'm thinking that it's better for us to solve this situation right now. So basically, I am importing something that we have not created yet because I made a copy paste of all of these imports, if you remember. Okay, so if we go back, we had created the utils folder, so we can actually go inside it and create this file right here. Okay, so utils, create a file .js. Cool. So in here, what we want to do is to create a custom function that takes in a string as a parameter and converts that string to a shorter piece of text, basically. And inside this function that we want to build, that is going to limit the length of a given piece of text, we check if the string length is bigger than 25 characters. If the length of this node, like in this case, it's just 5 characters, so that wouldn't apply. So if the length is up to 24 characters, 25 characters, we do nothing with that. We do not change that at all. We leave it and we render it inside the card as it is. But if this string length is actually bigger, we want to shorten this string. So we allow the user to see the text, but at the end we add ... and for the user to be able to read the full text, the user clicks here, opens the model, and then if the text is quite big, everything is visible here. Okay, so this is what I am trying to do. So let's go ahead and build this function. So firstly, we need to export because we are already importing it. Okay, so we need to export a const called truncate string. You can call whatever you want. This basically means shorten the text. That's what we are trying to do. Let me just do this basic syntax, and as I said, this takes in a string as a parameter. Okay, so now I need to check if my string length is less than 25 characters. So I'm gonna use the if, not like that, of course, if, and then I'm gonna add the else case. Okay, so if my string dot length is less than 25 characters, I do not want to do anything with it. I want to leave it as it is. Therefore, all I have to do is to return my string. There you go, return string. There you go. This simple. Else, I want to do something with it. If it's bigger than 25 characters, I want to shorten this. I want to truncate this text. Okay, therefore I need to return. I'm gonna grab my string and I'm gonna apply a method called substring, which will basically cut my string, and I will start from 0, so first character, and I will go up to 40. Okay, and then I can concatenate and use like ... Okay, and this is what we actually have it in here, and we can test this, or we can test this in our project. When we finish this part, we can run it and we can test this. So now we can go here, and we are already importing it, so we can make usage of this. Okay, so I can go here, and where the donation notes is, I can actually call my function and then pass donation notes. Okay, and this will make the string shorter in case the user provides a longer string. And I can see a typo there already. Okay, and I fix it. So the last part that we have to do is to build our model that we haven't built, but we are importing it already, so we can actually include it here at the top, so when the user clicks on this yellow part, opens the model. So let's do that. Okay, time to work on the model component. We haven't developed the component yet, but we are already importing it. Okay, and here we are using the state to help us to define if it's either true or false. Because remember that when the user clicks the yellow part, we have like this onClick event that changes the show model from false, which is the initial state, to true. Okay, so now, because the idea is when the user clicks this to open the model, that's what we want to do, and then we use the onClose event also to close it. So we can go here below, and we, just to finish up this file, we can access show model, and if this is true, this simple, you want to do something with it. And what you want to do is to render your model component. Oops, not like that, it's self-closing component. Okay, and I'm gonna pass the donation to this donation. Okay, and I also want to add the onClose event, not onClick, it's onClose event, and this event is similar to what we did at the top in the onClick. So I can copy paste this, use the same thing, but this time I'm gonna put this back to false. Okay, because starts as false when the page loads. If the user clicks the yellow part, okay, the yellow part, the model opens like I'm doing here, and then when the user clicks, when it's clicked, we can use the onClose to close it. Okay, so this is what I'm doing. So now we can actually work the inside the component itself. Okay, time to see on the screen what we have been building. As you can see, I closed the final project, okay, that we were looking at while developing this, and now it's time to run our servers. So I'm gonna open the the terminal, and notice that I'm at the root level of my project. I need to go inside my server folder. From there, I'm gonna run npm run dev, which is our script that we have inside the package.json. Now I can split my terminal, and I am now inside the server. I can navigate back to the root, and once inside the root, I'm gonna cd into client folder. Okay, once inside that folder, I can run npm run dev. Probably if you are a beginner, you get stuck because you are in the wrong folder trying to run the correct script, or the other way around. This happens to anyone, do not worry. Okay, let's see what we have. Okay, I can see that we have something. This is what we built, but yeah, we have one blood donation inside the database, but for some reason it is not getting displayed on the screen. Why is that? I have no idea. It's a bug. I messed it up somewhere. So I am inside the card. I looked at the code. I don't see anything wrong. This card lives inside the grid actually, okay? Because if you remember, inside our home page, yep, when we have results like we have now, more than one, we render this information, blood donation so far, the call to action button, all of that, and then we call the card grid, which contains in this case just one card, and we do not see it. So the problem should be somewhere here. So let me look at the code. I am mapping through donations. Okay, this is where the problem is. These basic syntax errors occur many times. You will see that you will mess up with this syntax. Sometimes you will even forget to use the return keyword and you won't see anything. Trust me, I had those situations in the past and still have, looks like. So I guess if I simply replace those brackets with these brackets, no, I made a mistake already. If I replace that one with this one, there you go, this fixes the problem. And then I click, and of course I see model here, but it's because we do not have any model yet, so it's not really working. So we need to click this and work on this. Okay, let's work on the model and then our UI in terms of rendering the data on the screen coming from the database. It's done. And then of course we need to work on the other pages for the editing functionality and the deleting functionality. So one step at a time, let's move on. Okay, we are inside our custom model component, and to be faster I'm just gonna copy paste the imports as usually. Okay, so basically just a few icons that we are going to need. Okay, and this model component, actually I need to pass two things: the donation that you are aware of course. Oops, not that, my mistake, it's not a capital D. Okay, and also the on close, there you have it. Okay, inside this I'm gonna return a div that I'm gonna actually style it right away. Also, as usual, this one needs to be fixed. The background color, it's going to be black. Okay, I want to give like a BG opacity of, I don't know, 60. Okay, top 0, left 0, right 0, bottom 0. So what we are doing here is when the user clicks on the card and opens the model, anything that is underneath that model gets this layer. Okay, so it's less visible, so the user focus on the model. That's the usual thing. Z-index needs to be higher because we are already using Z-index, and we need to use flex, justify center, items to the center. Okay, all good, and there you have it. Of course, we applied, I save it, and this is what we see, but we need to work on that. So what I also need to do before I do this, I mean, actually I'm gonna need another div. Okay, so I'm gonna need that div, but for this div I need to use the on click. I want to close the on click event, on click, and I'm gonna use the on close. Okay. Okay. So let me see. Okay, now we need to work inside this div, which will contain pretty much the main information. Okay, and that div will contain a lot of stuff, and I'm gonna start by adding right away the on click event, on click, which takes the event. Okay, event, or simply E if you prefer, it's up to you, the full word or just E. And what I want to do is to use, I want to grab this event and stop the propagation. That's how it's called. I need to invoke that like this. Okay, I can now style this div, class name, and I can use a width of a custom amount, which is going to be 600 pixels. Okay, a max width of full, height of 80%, BG is going to be white, rounded rounded XL, padding of 6 to all sides, flex for flexbox of course, flex call, and relative, because I want to stack things on top of each other, the information, that's why I'm using flex call. Okay, and then inside I can grab this icon, okay, and style it, and this is going to be the icon that the user clicks to close the model. See, boom, it's already working, of course. So I click anywhere inside the yellow area and I get the model, and if I click the cross here, because I'm adding this on click event to the icon itself, sorry, to the yes, to this icon. Okay, okay, cool. So now I need to render all of the information here, and we already did this. I'm not gonna really bother you with this. This is pretty much the same, and if you understood before, you for sure will understand now. The UI is not going to be exactly the same, as you can see. Let me see something. I think I have the same as lint. Yeah, there you have it. One problem fixed, the as lint problem solved the way we solved it before. So you know what we did. Okay, below this, and this is the ID that is actually coming from, because I'm accessing the ID, and this is coming from MongoDB, as I mentioned it like plenty of times. So next I want to render the information about the month, so I'm gonna add a new div using another icon but the same information. So this May 24 is the same, but I cannot add it now because that functionality is not added, but yeah, it's the same information. And we need to add the information about, sorry, that May 24 is actually coming from here, and now we need to add information about the location. Sorry, I'm so confused. Let me look at the code. Month, sorry, this is month, it's correct. Yeah, I'm confused because in here I wrote the same thing basically, but this is the month, this is the location, and these are the nodes. But when you open, you get the ID and then the month, and we are going to add the location and then the nodes. Okay, I confused myself because the UI is different, but at the end of the day we are doing the same thing. There you go, location and location nodes. So this is super simple. Okay, and remember that you will have access to this code in case you want to have it. Okay, so just check this video's description. Okay, this is pretty much done. Okay, we cannot really test this, as I mentioned it, using the UI because the edit functionality is not added yet, but we can work on that, and finally we'll then work on the deleting functionality. So the next step is to work in this part, which takes the user to the edit page, grabbing the specific ID, and this ID is of course the same ID that you get in here. So let's do that. Okay, we are now inside the update page, as you can see here, and we need to do plenty of things inside this file. So this is the page that we are going to be working on, and I decided to write some notes to explain you what I will be doing because I find it a bit easier. Okay, so what we want to do in this basically is when the user clicks on a given node, okay, in this case the icon to edit, okay, notice that we go from the home page as I explained it before, and when the user clicks, goes to the edit page, okay, where the unique ID gets there in the URL because we are grabbing that using parameters, okay. So what we want to do basically is we need to use the use state, okay, the React hook use state to set the initial values for our month location nodes, and we need to start with empty strings, okay. After that, we grab the unique ID of the document and we fetch the information that exists inside the database, okay, using Axios, okay. We did this before. So we then update this with the pre-existing information that lives inside the database. And this is important because this way we display the user whatever information actually exists, because I have this information, this information, this information, and when I click, I want to see a form where all of those inputs or where all of those fields are pre-populated with the exact same information, so the user knows what is updating, because the user might want to update just one field or all of the fields or whatever, or can basically decide not even to update and clicks the button and goes back to the home page, okay, to another node maybe, okay. So, and then we finally, the third part is to handle the edit. So we grab whatever the user inputted inside the form that we are going to build, and we will use that using the onChange event. So whenever the user is typing inside, we want to save that data, okay? And we save that data when the button gets clicked, we save that data. So this is the initial explanation, because we are going to be doing a lot of stuff in here. And as I mentioned it a few times already, this is a beginner level tutorial, and I want to make sure that you understand what we are doing here. Of course, you will still have to play with the code and do all of this on your own to really fully, deeply understand what's going on. But I think I'm giving you a solid foundation for you to understand the steps and how they work one after the another. Okay, let's do this. Okay, as usual, let's import a lot of things that I know that we need inside this file. Okay, let's copy paste all of the imports so it's a bit faster. Okay, so these are of course the hooks, React hooks, and we have these custom components that you know already, and we are importing this port number and blah blah blah, and Axios because we'll use Axios to fetch the data from the database, and we will want to use the params and use navigate. The params is how we get the unique ID, and the use navigate to redirect the user after something is done. Okay, so the first thing that I want to actually do is to create my consts. Okay, so I'm gonna go and create right below here. I'm gonna create my const. I'm gonna call this edit donation, because that's what we are trying to do, to edit, to update an existing donation that lives inside the database. And inside this, okay, I want to define plenty of consts, okay, and I'm gonna actually copy paste them because we did this already. There's no point to spend much time in here. So these are, I'm setting my initial values to empty strings, so when the page loads I have no information. I'm gonna be using the loading, of course, because I will use it in a similar way that we did before. This is, as I said, the use navigate in order to redirect the user to another page, in this case the home page, when the update is done. And this is how we grab, of course, the unique ID. Okay, later we'll come back to here to add the UI notifications when the document is updated, deleted, and all of that. In this case, just updated, of course, but for now this is good. So we now need to focus on the use effect. Okay, now I have added the use effect, as you can see, and this is way similar to what we did before. Therefore, I'm not gonna type this, I'm just gonna explain you. Okay, so what we want to do is to, with the help of the use effect and Axios, we want to go inside the database and look for this particular ID, whatever ID it is, because this is dynamic, of course, and we want to get the information that is there. So this case, the response, and we want to get the data month, the data location, the data nodes, and all of that. Of course, that before actually fetching the data, we set the loading to true, and after doing that, we set it back to false. And this is when things go right. When things go wrong, as we did also, we also have we handle the possible error. We set the loading to false because there's an error, I'm not fetching anymore, and we console log the error. Okay, and this depends on the ID. That's why I'm passing that inside the dependency array. So now we need another function, okay, that is going to handle the edit. So when the user, we save the data inside variables, and when the user clicks the button, we submit that data and save it. Okay, that's what we need to do now. Okay, this is our function that will handle the edit. So basically, and we do not have any UI yet, but we'll have like the form with all of the input fields, and we'll have like the button at the top. And when the user clicks that button, we'll trigger this function, which will save whatever data is inside the fields, and we'll save the data. Okay, then we'll again set the loading to true, because we are going to talk to the database and use Axios one more time to access this specific document inside the database. We provide the data that we are getting from the user using the onChange event, okay? And we provide that data, so that data gets actually updated inside the database. And then, of course, we put the loading back to false and push the user to the home page when the process is done. As you can see, I also added like these comments, because we later want to come back here and work on the user UI notifications for all of the CRUD operations. But for now, this is good. So now it's time for us to build the UI using all of this. And we are getting all of these errors one more time because we are importing stuff that we are not really using inside our function. But let's take care of that now. Time to finally use all of this logic that we created here at the top inside of our UI. So what I'm going to do right away is to style this outer div, and we'll have a padding of 4 to all sides, okay, and a padding top of 150 pixels. Remember, our header is fixed, that's why I need to add this padding. Okay, So now let's create a basic markup here. I can actually go ahead and just call my back2 custom component that always takes the user back to the home page. That's the destination that we defined earlier in this tutorial. After that, I'm gonna just render one h1, and I'm gonna write something like update blood donation details, because that's what we want to do. We want to details. We want to update that, and I can style that right away by adding a class, a few classes, not children. Come on, sorry, I'm a bit tired. So the text is going to be 2XL, and on MD the text is going to be 3XL, and the text is always going to be at the center. Text sent, oops, come on. Text always at the center. Margin Y of 10. Okay, there you have it. So below, it's where I'm gonna check if the loading is true, because initially the loading is set to false. So if we go here, the loading of course is always set to false until we change it. So I'm gonna check if this loading is true, and if the loading is true, and this will happen when we are fetching the data, okay, or when we are updating the data. This is when we fetch, this is when we update. If that's the case, I want to then render the loader component. So all I have to do is check if loading is true, and if that's the case, I'm gonna render my loader component that we also worked on earlier in this tutorial. Else I do not want to do anything with it. So loading, okay, it's good. Continuing, all of these arrows will go away, so just ignore. I know that this red underline, it's annoying, but trust me, this will go away. Below this, okay, it's where I'm gonna have my main div that will actually contain 3 other divs. And below that, because each div, because this is going to be the div that will hold the month, this one the location, and this one the nodes. And below that, I also need my button. And this button is truly important, because this is the button that is going to trigger everything, because we'll use the click event, and when the button gets clicked, we'll pass this, we'll actually execute this function. Okay, that does all of this, saves the data and updates the database with the data that is now the more recent data. So what I want to do to this button is to add, of course, the classes, and I want to do bg custom red. The text needs to be white, so it's more readable. Padding Y of 3, margin Y of 6, and rounded LG. Okay, and I can now pass the onClick event, as mentioned a few times already, and I can then onClick execute this function. Okay, run this function. Okay, that does whatever needs to be done, and I can go back to this outer div so I do not forget, and I can start style it right away. So I'm gonna need flexbox. Things will stack on top of each other on smaller devices like usual. I want this to be rounded XL. I want the width to be full. On MD, I want my max width to be just 50%. Okay, and I want padding to all sides of 4, and when I achieve that max width, I want to center things right in the middle. So that's what I want to do. all of these divs will contain the inputs and all of that. So I can style them with a margin Y of 4. So I give some space between them. So I can do this to all of them. This is just a basic markup, of course, right? So, and then inside we need to grab whatever the user is typing. So now we can go one by one and do that. And because this is simple, as usual, I'm not gonna spend much time with this. I'm just gonna do this and explain you a bit. So what we want to do is to provide a label so the user knows what is going to update, what field it's going to update. The input itself is going to to have a value of month, and this is already in here, okay, the data, okay, and we want to on change, so whenever the user types stuff, we want to grab whatever it's in there, and then we have the event and we get the value that is coming from that event. That's what I'm doing here. Okay, moving on, we can continue, and inside these two divs we are going to do something very similar. So I can in fact copy paste this to this one, but this time we are not actually setting the month, we are setting the location. So in here the value is going to be location, and we need to use the set location, and that's a typo, set location. So what do I need? Okay, in here it's not this, it's just location. The label must say location instead. So this looks good to me. It's the same, it's still text type, the value is location, all good. So the last one is of course the notes. So it's one more time super similar. So let's put it here. This time notes. And yeah, I forgot to copy paste this label. So let's do it. In here we want to say notes. So this is the label that the user sees, and not location but notes. So these are coming from our states. And we have still plenty of aslint errors. So let me just go here, and if I click here I get this bulb, and if I disable, this fixes some errors. Okay, not all, but a few. So let's continue. As you can see, I fixed the aslint problem, but I'm looking at the code and I can tell definitely that I messed up, not the logic, but where I wrote the code. If you pay attention, you normally have per file, you have like one function, but I have this one here and I have this one here. So basically I used a different shortcut, and when I did the copy paste I didn't realize that I was copy pasting this also. I just wanted to copy paste these consts to be faster, and that caused me to make a mistake that only now I am realizing. But this is simple, so we need to get rid of this because this is not necessary, and we just need to move all of this inside this update function right before the return, and this should fix all of these errors that we still see. So let's try to do that. So I'm gonna cut this, so before the return but inside the function update, let's put everything in the same order. So this is the use effect, Control X. Sorry for this, but this happens because I'm looking at the code, talking, thinking and explaining, and trust me, it's easy to mess up like this, but at least I can sooner or later figure out what I did wrong and go back and fix that. So now if I delete this, boom, magic happened. Okay, so let me now format the document, and this is the same thing. I'm not changing any of the logic. I'm just placing the code where it should be. Okay, so our states, our use effect that we use to fetch the data, blah blah blah. Okay, and then this is where we save the data and update the data with the new information coming from the input. So this looks okay to me. Hopefully I didn't make any other mistake. I now see like we now have the 3 inputs with the labels. So let's try to run this code to see if this works or not. And I also added the word update here inside the button because I forgot to do that when we wrote this bit of code. So you can and must also have this piece of text inside this button. So let's run the code and see what happens. Do you still remember how to run the code? So you open the terminal. Notice that you are at the root level. I like to start by running the server first. So cd into server folder. From there npm run dev, boom. Good, it's all working. I see the messages as expected. I can split now the terminal. Now I'm inside server, so I need to navigate back. So cd space dot dot to go back to the root level. Once there, you can cd into client folder in this case, and then you can run the same npm. You can run the same script npm run dev because we are using the same one, and that opens localhost, and we can see this. Let's close this one, and of course, as expected, everything seems to be correct, no errors or anything. So let's try to update this document. Okay, notes, let's write my notes are updated. So my notes are now updated. Boom, and there you have it. See, and this is actually giving us the chance to see also our custom truncate function, which shortens the text. So I'm gonna actually write a bit more so we see it in action. Also, we take the chance. So let's see what happens when the string gets a bit longer than expected. I'm gonna save this, and as you can see, so we see these characters, but for us to fully read the message, and I'm thinking that I should maybe give space here. Yeah, it's slightly better in my opinion. We need to click on the card to open the model, and when we do that, we can see the full message. So now we see what we have been developing, and everything seems to be correct. So I'm gonna also update the other 2 fields just to make sure that everything is working for sure. And it is amazing. Well, it's not. No, so let's try the location up. Something is wrong here. See, up, so the date, I'm pulling the wrong data here, chances are. So I am pulling the wrong data. So month, location, nodes. Funny. So why am I not getting the correct stuff? Because if I go back, and I also saw another typo there in the meantime, so let's fix it. Can do that. So May 24, so let's change the date to just September, whatever. It's working. Oh yeah, I'm pulling the, oh, it's the, no, I see the correct data inside. Funny. Let me just see the code where I'm pulling the information wrongly. Well, I just stopped the video to look for the error because I couldn't find it, but this time I couldn't find the error because there was no error. Okay, so as you can see, this is all good. So I have the same word, and if I click to edit, I do get the same information. When I update, I click the model, I do get the same information. And if I try to update, just to be 100% sure, I update them all, and this gets reflected both the card and the model. So this time I made no mistake. I was just confusing while testing and explaining. So great. So as you can see, we now can create a donation. We can see the donations that we have, and we can update the donation. So this is great. So we are moving onwards to build up this project and to learn things on the way, because this is real life. You will have to debug things. You will go and get stuck. You will make mistakes, and this is all natural. Okay, so trust me, I am still a beginner myself, but I improved a bit. And if I was able to learn all of this and teach you all of this like I'm teaching you now, I also believe that you watching this video also can do a very similar thing. You can learn from me, use this as a blueprint, and build your own project, and who knows, teach somebody else. This is when you really solidify your own knowledge. So why not do that? Consider that. So let's then continue. So this is great. We can now render the data on the screen, whatever data that we have inside the database. There's only one document, therefore we get only one single card, and we can also update this single card or whatever card we have, and that's great. But we need to work on the delete functionality, but also on creating a new document. So when I click this button, I will be redirected. Okay, as you can see, I will be redirected to the create page, but I have nothing. So let's build the UI for this, so the user can use this UI to actually create and save a document inside the database. Let's go. As you might expect, all of this code for all of these pages is very similar. So we went through all of this already pretty much. So what I'm gonna do now is, as usually, I'm gonna copy paste my imports, put them right at the top, okay? And this time I wanna make sure that I do not mess up. So all the logic is written inside your function, but before your return statement, okay? So this time I'm gonna again copy paste all of the use states, okay? Because we need to set them to empty strings initially, and remember, we are now creating a document. So we'll have a form like we had in the update, but this time we want to create a document. So we provide a form with empty fields. Okay, so the user types whatever decides to type inside those fields, and then we need to handle this. I'm gonna call it save donation, because we need to handle that. The user wants to save a blood donation, so we need to have a function that is going to do something very, very similar like we did with the edit donation. So in fact, because it's that similar, I'm gonna just copy paste, okay, and explain you one more time. Let's go over this together. But this is, yeah, as you can probably tell by now, this is extremely similar, okay? We do not have the UI yet, but once we build the UI here, we provide these fields for the user to type the information, and we do a similar thing. We grab whatever data was inputted and we save it. We do not need this for the moment. UI notification, because I want to leave this to the end. So let's just forget about this for the moment. Doesn't really matter. And all of this is the same, right? Use the method now is changed to post, as we saw earlier when we were developing the backend part. This is the method that you need to use in order to save documents inside the database. Once again, we grab our server port number, we go to our custom API, and we provide the data that we are getting from the form that doesn't exist yet, but it's way similar to what we did in the update one. So yeah, so this ends up being very repetitive in a way, but you need to go through this and work on this so you make sure that you do not forget a thing, and that's the way I think it should be done. So now we need to create all of this, and I'm just checking here so I do not mess up. Yeah, so I'm gonna build a UI as we did already. So I'm gonna style this outer div, so class name, padding 4 to all sides as usual, and you know why by now. I'm gonna give a padding top of 150, and if you do not know at this point why I'm giving this padding top, you're not paying attention to what I've been explaining, but I really think you understand, so there's no point to really go over this again. So inside, as usual, I'm gonna bring up our back to button, which always takes back to the home page like we did already, and we now need a h1 tag, which is similar to what we had, but this time we want to register and not update. Okay, super similar. And once again, we're gonna check if the loading is happening, if it's true, and if that's the case, we'll render our loader component, which is just a basic component that says processing, and you will see this in a very briefly moment. Okay, you need to test this on your own. If it's not loading, we do nothing, so that's why it's an empty string. And then the time comes to have our main div like we had before, and this div, like before, will hold the 3 divs for the inputs and also the button. So as you can see, this is pretty much the same, and now we see the UI, the button brings us back, sends us to the correct page, bring us back, correct page. This is the same thing, so we are grabbing using again the on change, so whatever the user types in here, okay, we are using the event and we target the value, so we grab whatever value it's in there and we save those values inside this handle donation. So there you have it. Okay, then we pass the data, go to the correct route and save the data. So it's pretty much the same, and this time of course the function name changes to be a better match to what we are doing. But so let's see if this is actually working. So test 2, and this is what I'm going to be writing in all of them, save, and boom, there you have it. See, amazing, super simple. Test 2, test 2, test 2, and if we click, it's all good. This is all working, and of course the ID is different because it's unique per document. Okay, cool. So yeah, and if I want to edit also, so it doesn't really matter, I can do this whatever I want. I don't know if you notice it, but you saw the processing for a tiny bit. I'm gonna do it again, so I'm gonna do blah 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 blah, and when I click update, look at here and you will see that piece of text that I was showing you. Okay, the loader component is just a word saying processing ... and if I click the button, and you saw it for a briefly moment. Okay, so this is definitely working. So the last thing that we need to do, because now we can add documents. Okay, we can add them, whatever, blah blah blah, we can edit them, blah 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 blah, of course. So we now just need a way to delete them. I click here, I am sent to delete page, but there's no logic in this page yet in this file, so we cannot do it. But this is the last step, and let me tell you, if you've been watching this so far and if you committed to yourself to go through this code and build your own project based on this, all I'm gonna tell you is this is exactly what I did in order to learn this process. I watched one or two tutorials, okay, and I mixed up those ideas, that code, and of course I had to test the code, and then I came up with my own UI, my own bits of logic. I made changes to the code, but going through that process was necessary in order for me to be here now today teaching you this. So if you do a similar thing, I am very, very, very confident that you can also build your first full stack web application using this MERN stack. Okay, we know that these days Next.js allow us to build full stack apps without these custom APIs. It's simply different. We get next requests and next responses. I know all of that, but trust me, this MERN stack is still used these days. So chances are that you will need to work on this type of projects. So this is still a very, very, very important skill to have. And of course, you also deal with React, which is Next, of course, also as React, because Next is built on top of React. But I mean, if you are able to master just the basics when it comes to Next.js and MERN stack, when it comes to JavaScript, I think you are in a good way. Hopefully I am right, because I'm trying to build that path for myself. So hopefully I'm correct. And if you think I'm either right or wrong, please let me know in the comment section below, because just learning this stuff and writing the code, building every single project, and then recording and reviewing and all of this, it's very, very time consuming. You are looking at a 3 hours long video and you think this took me only 3 hours. Trust me, you can easily multiply this by 10 or even more, because there's a lot going on behind the scenes. So I would really, really, really appreciate you to let me know what you think of these projects, what you like, what you dislike, and what you want to see. And hopefully I can match to your own needs and preferences and continue developing this stuff for free in the channel. So if that's the case, do not forget to leave me a big like, because that would make my day for sure. All of this talk out of the way, this is me, like it or hate it, this is me. Let's move on and build the last functionality, which will allow the user to delete a document inside the database. So let's go. We are almost done here. In terms of C.R.U.D operations, this is the last one, the delete. Okay, so this one, the delete, is going to be actually simpler, because we just want to figure out what document that we need to delete, and yeah, we want to delete it with a push of a button. In this case, clicking the icon. The UI will warn the user that if you press this button, this document will be deleted forever. So the user knows that after pressing the button, there's no way back. Okay, but in terms of logic, for us, it's simple. So let's do this. We can start one more time by copy pasting all of these imports. Okay, so it's faster, the same reason, no worries. And we already have our delete function. Okay, and one more time inside the function and before the return is where we are going to define our consts. Okay, one more time, copy pasting and explaining. We have the loading state, and we have been using it, so you know this by heart by now, hopefully. So you know what this means also, and you know why I need this. If you don't, something is wrong, go back in the video before keep watching. But hopefully you get my point. So now we just need a const to handle the document delete. So I'm gonna call it handle delete document, you can call it whatever, and it's pretty similar. So let me just write the basic syntax. So const handle what? Handle delete document. Starting these function names with the word handle is like a convention, but you can call whatever you want. So there's not really much like a right or wrong situation in here. Okay,
Okay, this is okay, I believe. And now what we need to do, firstly, like in every action that we do when it comes to database, we need to set our loading to true, because initially it's false. So before we delete something, before we start talking to the database, we change from false, which is the initial state, to true. This is simple, you know this by heart. And then you can grab Axios, okay? And you can also use the fetch method, which is just a JavaScript method, but professionally, Axios is one of the most popular packages, and I think it's the most popular one. I might be right or wrong, let me know in the comments. And then we need to chain another method, which is the delete in this case. And this time we need, as usual, we need to provide our API route and our ID. Okay, so I'm just gonna copy paste. And we are grabbing whatever dynamic ID because we are getting the ID from the params. Okay, this is what we've been doing, nothing new. And then I'm gonna chain the then method, then, okay, and then I wanna do something. So let me write the anonymous arrow function, and that's it. I think I'm not making any mistake. After deleting this, I want to grab my loading again and of course put it back to false because the operation is now finished. Okay, here it's going to be the UI message to the user, okay, like a React Toast message. It's going to be the different package because we already installed it, but it's similar to React Toast messages, which is a bit more popular, I believe. Still does the same thing pretty much, generally speaking. And after that, after displaying the message, we want to navigate the user back to the home page, which is the usual thing that we have been doing so far. So we want to push the user back to the home page, to the, oops, where am I doing? What am I doing? Okay, back to the root page, to the home page. So for sure, you know this. So now we catch, and of course this part is when things go right, and if something goes wrong, we need to catch the error, whatever error we are getting, of course, right? So error, and let me finish up this syntax. This is a problem when we are talking and stuff. We sometimes make mistakes in the syntax and things break. So just pay attention to that. So it's gonna happen one of the things. Either things go right and this happens, or things go wrong and this happens. Therefore, you need to put your loading back to false. And in here, we'll also send a UI message, red color, and you can also console log the error. So all of this is whatever. This is what I've been teaching you. So you probably, if you like learning things by repetition, you enjoy my style of teaching. If not, you probably hate my style of teaching. But yeah, this is my style and I'm trying to adapt this to YouTube. Let's see if this works or not, but this is me, okay? Cool. So now that we have all the information, we can of course use it inside our UI, and we can start by styling this outer div, and you know this by heart, come on. I'm not even gonna mention it, I'm just gonna type it, okay? And there you have it. So inside, the UI is going to be different, but we still want to use our back to component because we always want to give the user the chance to go back, because the user might click one of those icons by mistake. So we always want to give the user the chance to go back to the home page. There you have it. So it goes back to the home page, okay? Because maybe I click it here, but I made a mistake. So that's why we always give that option to when we are trying to delete or even to update, because I might be wrong for some reason. Okay, back to, and then as usual, we'll have an h1 tag, to indicate the title so the user knows what it's doing. Let me just change this to view word drop so you can actually see what I'm doing, and you can actually stop the video and copy the code if you want to. Once again, we need to check if the loading is happening, and if the loading is true, if it's happening, we show the loader. So yeah, the same stuff going on. And then our main div this time is actually going to be different, because all we want is to render a bit of text and a button that will trigger the deletion of the document inside the database. So this is super simple. So this is the main div, right? And if I can click here now, of course we see this and we have this information. Okay, so this is the same stuff. Okay, so I give this information to the user, and if the user wants to go away, clicks this button. So I'm very confident that this all works, but it's time to do a final testing to see if this is actually working. So we have 3 donations. I can delete 1 donation, boom, gone. Delete 1 more, boom, gone. So delete is working. I'm gonna delete all of them so we see the UI when we have no donations, and as expected we see this background image, and we click the button and we can type whatever to create a new donation, and the counter is set to 1 again. And if I want to update, I can just type up, just these 2 fields are enough, and I can update, and as you can see, this is updated and this is updated. So you now know that everything is working, and there's one last thing for us to do, which is to build on this UI message for all of the pages. So when the user creates, edits or deletes, we want to let the user know that the action actually was successful. So the user should know that actually deleted something, actually updated something, or actually created something. So it's just a good thing to have in terms of UI UX. So let's move on and build that, because that will wrap up this project. And I think you should be tired by now. I am, but trust me, this is a good way for you to learn this. Hopefully you agree with me. Okay, time to some UI notifications. And if you remember, we installed this package earlier in this tutorial, and I'm inside the client folder. And if you go to package.json, you will find this. This package is similar to React Toast package, okay? In my opinion, it's similar, okay? I do not master none, so, but for me, it's similar. Anyways, do you remember when I actually went to the heart of this application and said, I mean, if you change it here, you need to change it there, remember? Way earlier in this tutorial, I changed this ID from root, which comes with the installation, to the JavaScript way. And then I said, for you to change this in here and the app doesn't crash, you need to change it somewhere else. Do you remember what that file was? Okay, you might remember or not, doesn't matter. That file was actually the main. And as the name suggests, it's the main file, because everything happens. Basically, your app is in here. Whatever your app content is inside this component, okay? And there it is where we change it. But my point here is I wanted to make you visit this file, because this is important. So like we want to use this file because we want to call that package that we installed in this file, so we can use it throughout our app, okay? So that's actually the idea, okay? So we now need to wrap our app with that package that I just showed you. So for that, let's just include it. So I'm gonna write import. Oops, not caps lock, I'm so sorry. I'm tired as usual. Okay, good. So the package name is snack bar provider. Sorry, the package name is Notistack, but I want to import the snack bar provider. Okay, provider. Hopefully I'm not messing up. We'll find out soon. from where? From that package that I mentioned, which is the Notistack. There you have it. And now what I want to do, and now this is already breaking, doesn't really matter. Okay, no worries. I want to wrap, as I mentioned it, I want to wrap my entire app with this no, so it's not a self-closing then, with this component. So let me see. Okay, this looks good to me. Format the document. Hopefully this will work now and should work, because I'm wrapping my app with this component that I'm importing from this package, I should be able to use this UI notification throughout my app. So that's the goal. That's why we did it this. So now we need to go back inside the create, update, and delete pages. Okay, pages, create, delete, and update, and include these UI notifications. It's going to be just a matter of copy paste, because this is super simple, but I just wanted to show you this, because there's no point for you to import this manually inside every single page and then use it. No, you do it in a better way. You use it at the root level basically, and then if you have to delete or change or whatever or edit, you always go to one single place. That's the logic. Okay, so let's do that right now. Okay, if you're experiencing some sort of dizziness, it's normal. I'm causing you that. But the thing is, I wasn't fully convinced, but I was talking and looking at the code, and I thought there was no error, but there was an error that I couldn't see, and you probably saw it. But the video is unfinished, so I now know that I definitely made an error. So let's pay attention to here. So I am inside the home page where we render the cards, and if you look at here, so we have the same information here and there. But if we look inside the model, as you can see, I have a different information inside the model. And I know that I actually wrote this because I wanted to leave this message to you. But the thing is, that means that the model is correct because I know that I wrote this. So the problem, if you look this in a logical way, needs to be when we are rendering the card on the home page. So let's go to that file, to that page, to the home page. So, or we can use the shortcuts. I think it's way easier. Okay, home page. So this is where we render the card. And what I mean is, so blood donation so far gives you the length. So call to action button. And where is the error? Okay, it's not actually this page because we are rendering the card grid, which actually renders the card, and this is the card. And now it's easy to see that something is wrong, because you know that you have the donation month, location, and notes, and we are rendering the month, and there you have it. We are rendering it twice. So I made this error a long time ago, and if you could interrupt me, you would have said, okay, you made this error a long time ago and you didn't realize. Yeah, that's true, I admit that. But guess what? You are going to make these errors also, trust me. And this is just the reality. So now we just need to change this from month to location. And when I save, I should see this updated. And boom, now you actually have this correct. And just to be 100% sure, one more time, I'm gonna do XX, XX, XX. So this is what you are updating. Update XX, XX, and XX. You don't see it in here, of course, because we are using our custom function. So definitely we are done now, and we can finally move on to the UI user notifications that I was talking to you about. So let's continue. Keep in mind that these notifications that we are about to add inside our application, it's not the focus. So I'm not going to actually explain how this actually works in detail. All I'm going to do is to basically do a few copy pastes, and then you can and must explore this on your own. So what I'm going to do is going to copy paste my import. Okay, So that should go inside here. Okay, and I'm just copy pasting, and because I didn't import the use snack bar from Notistack, I'm getting this error, of course, because I'm trying to use something that I have not imported yet. And now I am, of course, fixing this. And now this is complaining because it's not getting used. But as you remember, and as you can see, I added this small note for us to come back so we wouldn't forget. So basically, after we post the data inside the database and set the loading back to false, we want to let the user know that yes, we saved your document inside the database. So we'll display this message inside a green background rectangle. So that's why I'm using this success variant. Okay, and if something goes wrong, okay, I want to use something similar. I want to let the user know, oh, something is wrong, I cannot save your document. So let's refresh the page. It should work, hopefully, and let's try to create a new document to see if we see that notification here. So I'm gonna do just blah 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 blah, and boom, there you have it. See, there's your notification. Boom, gone. So we now know that this is working when we create a document, but when we delete or update, we want to have a similar thing. So we need to go to the, in this case, to the edit or update edit page. No, there's no edit page, there's the update page. So we add it, but it's called, the page is called update. Okay, so it's of course similar now, right? So we need to firstly import, okay, and we can do that in here. After that, we want to create our const, like we can do it right here. So we can use that, okay, basically we are setting this so we can use it. And as we did here, okay, looks like I didn't leave any notes here, but this is not so important because actually I need, oh, there you go. Yeah, this is when we fetch. So we do not want to do that when we fetch. We want to do that when we save the data, when we update the data. So we can just go and I'm gonna copy paste. It's the same thing, of course. The string is slightly different. This time says blood donation updated instead of created, okay? But the error message is going to be the same. An error is an error, so there's not much about it. So let's try to use, let's try the update. Let's refresh, okay, and I go to this one and I'm gonna do blah 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 blah, press update. There you have it, blood donation updated. So as you can see, this is extremely simple. So that's why I'm not spending much time on this. The goal is to teach you about MERN, stack, and CRUD operations inside MongoDB using Mongoose. So that's the main focus. And of course, we are building the front end with React and Tailwind CSS, which is also in demand. The last one is the delete. So let's look this file, delete. Yeah, we have it. And we, as usual, left it there. So let's do the import. Okay, I'm gonna copy this where I'm importing this, and then I'm using the same stuff. Okay, should be okay right here. And now same way, success. Okay, in this case it's going to be in here, and we do not say registered, we say deleted. And one more time, here our message is the same, so let's copy paste to here and put it there. And this is why I like to leave comments like breadcrumbs. So when I know that I have these simple tasks in hand, I don't really have to review the code. I have the comment there and I know what I'm doing, so it's way easier and way faster for me to find the line where I need to add and or update the code. So let's refresh and let's delete this one, and boom. So this is all working. This is cool. Hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial is over. It's a quite long tutorial. And of course, I could have made this tutorial like 1 hour shorter or even more than that, but I really wanted to show you every single bit. Okay, this is my commitment to you because I am learning this way and I think it's a good way of teaching. I know that some people will say, yeah, it's too much, whatever. I'm learning, I'm improving also my own skills because at the end of the day, I am not a programmer. I am not a professional. So I'm just someone learning and teaching online. And I hope you enjoyed that. If not, that's all right. That's plenty of channels out there, so find the one or the ones that suit you better. Nothing wrong against that. I also do that, and I still do it. I always did it and I still do it, and I think I will be doing it for the near future at least. So I do get that. So but if you watch this video up to this moment, that tells me that you are committed to learning and you enjoy the way I teach things. So for that, a big thank you, and keep watching because I'm planning to have more full stack projects in this channel, and some will use Next.js. And yeah, I'm cooking a new tutorial where I will be building a fully working e-commerce website using Next.js. So if you find that attractive enough, do not forget to subscribe and to activate all the notifications so you do not miss a thing.